News of Elon Musk's latest legal trouble had spread like wildfire, and the world couldn't get enough of it. The courtroom itself was a mix of outdated wood paneling and cold, clinical steel, the kind of room that made everything feel heavier. The tension in the air was thick, like something was about to break. Elon Musk stood at the center of it all, calm, composed, his sharp gaze scanning the room. He wasn't just any defendant. He was the Elon Musk, the tech mogul and visionary whose every move was under a microscope. But today, he wasn't on trial for his companies or his controversies. No, today he was here for something far more personal. A lawsuit, some say, could change the course of his career, or at least the way people saw him. "Mr. Musk," the judge called out, a man in his late 50s with a graying beard and rimmed glasses. His voice was skeptical, laced with the kind of tone that said, "You're not fooling me, Musk. You're here today because of a miscommunication with your business partner, is that correct?" Musk didn't flinch. He had been through much worse. Media scrutiny, investor chaos, and even legal nightmares that could have crushed lesser men. But there was something about today that felt different. The judge didn't look at him like a billionaire tech genius, nor a futurist. No, in the judge's eyes, he was just another man who had to answer for his mistakes. The courtroom waited for an answer. "Yes," Musk said simply, his voice steady. "A misunderstanding." The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "A misunderstanding? Really?" he muttered, almost to himself. "And you expect this court to believe that a billionaire, the CEO of several companies, and a man known for his eccentricities simply made a mistake?" Musk didn't react. He knew what was coming next. It was all part of the show. The judge had been waiting to get his laugh in. People loved to see the mighty fall, especially when that mighty person was someone like Musk, who was often perceived as untouchable. Then, the judge did something unexpected. He leaned back in his chair and let out a short, mocking laugh. "I suppose we're all just human after all, Mr. Musk. But let me tell you, the idea of a genius like you being caught up in something so trivial, it's almost laughable." The courtroom was a blend of awkward chuckles and murmurs, but Musk didn't flinch. He simply let the moment pass, his eyes never leaving the judge. There was something about the way the judge smirked, something almost too smug, that made Musk's pulse quicken. He could feel the weight of the moment, the way everything was teetering on the edge of something bigger. But then, in a move that left everyone in the room frozen in confusion, Musk did something nobody expected. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into the inner pocket of his jacket, the kind of smooth, deliberate motion that made everyone lean in. There was a palpable shift in the room, a sense of unease rippling through the air. Musk's hand withdrew something shiny, a badge. At first, no one knew what it was. Some thought it might be a corporate ID, some sort of tech executive trinket. But then, Musk turned it towards the judge, and the silver gleam caught the light. A USSS badge. The courtroom fell into an eerie silence. The judge's face drained of color, the smug expression replaced with a visible sense of surprise. His hand froze in midair, as if he had been caught in some sort of time loop. He looked at Musk for a moment, then back at the badge, and then again at Musk, his eyes narrowing, his brain processing the implications. I don't understand," the judge stammered, his confident demeanor crumbling in the face of something far more dangerous than a simple lawsuit. "What does this mean?" Musk didn't immediately answer. Instead, he let the silence hang in the air, watching as the judge's words fumbled, unsure of what had just happened. His voice was calm, almost measured as he spoke. "This court is not the only thing at stake today, Judge," Musk said, his tone shifting just slightly. "There's more going on here than you realize." The tension in the room grew even thicker, and all eyes were now fixed on Musk, some in awe, others in disbelief. What had just happened? Why had he shown the USSS badge? Was Musk involved with the United States Secret Service in some clandestine way? Was this about a bigger conspiracy? The judge shifted uneasily in his seat, his brow furrowing. The weight of the moment was palpable. He was a man who had seen countless high-profile cases, but this one had taken an unexpected turn. It wasn't just a legal battle. Musk wasn't just a tech mogul fighting over contracts or patents. No, this was something deeper, something that could change everything. The room was so still, you could almost hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. The audience, normally so eager to weigh in with their opinions, had gone silent. No one dared move. For a brief second, Musk glanced at the people in the back of the courtroom. The reporters, the onlookers. He knew they were all dying to know what he was about to say next. What was the deal with the USSS badge? Why was he showing it now? Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of silence, Musk spoke again, his voice cool and collected. "You're not going to understand this just yet," Musk said, turning his gaze back to the judge. "But you'll soon find out that I'm not the one on trial here. The world is." The judge, still stunned, tried to recover his composure. "Mr. Musk, this is not some kind of joke, is it?" He took a moment to steady himself before continuing. "You're not trying to make a spectacle of this court, are you?" Musk shook his head slowly, his eyes narrowing. "No joke, just reality." And with that, the courtroom door creaked open, signaling the arrival of someone who would change everything. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The sound of the courtroom door creaking open seemed to echo through the silence like a bell tolling in a distant church. Every head turned, eyes wide, anticipating the next twist in this already bizarre turn of events. The figure who entered wasn't just anyone. This man, dressed in a dark suit with a clean, crisp tie, moved with a quiet confidence. But it wasn't his polished appearance that caught everyone's attention. It was the way people in the room instinctively leaned back, as if sensing something more than just the usual drama. There was something about him that made the air feel charged, like the calm before a storm. The man locked eyes with Musk for a brief moment before turning his gaze to the judge, who was still visibly rattled by the earlier revelation. Musk stood motionless, his lips curling into a slight, almost imperceptible smile. He knew who this was, of course he did. No one else would have dared show up uninvited, especially at a moment like this. The newcomer took a few steps forward and then stopped. The judge, still trying to regain his composure, adjusted his glasses and finally spoke, his voice a little less assured than before. "Who are you?" the judge asked, though it was clear he already had a sinking feeling in his gut about what was coming next. The man didn't flinch. "Special Agent Ryan Harris, United States Secret Service." Gasps rippled through the room. The name Secret Service had a weight to it, an association with high stakes, power, and protection of the most influential people in the world. But this was no ordinary moment of security detail. There was an undercurrent of something darker, something more complex. By the time he enrolled at Queen's University in Ontario, and then later transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, Musk was already thinking bigger than most people could fathom. He wasn't just interested in making money. He wanted to change the world. After graduating, Musk went on to co-found Zip2, which was eventually sold for nearly $300 million. But it wasn't the sale of Zip2 that defined Musk's future. It was what came next. Musk founded X.com, which later became PayPal, and the rest was history. He was on a mission to change the world, from internet payments to electric cars, space travel, and beyond. But it wasn't just his business ventures that caught the attention of the government. From the very beginning, Musk had been operating on a different level. His interests were never solely in making profit. Musk dreamed of a future beyond Earth. His obsession with space led to the founding of SpaceX, which, despite countless failures, eventually put him in direct opposition with governmental interests. SpaceX was more than just a private company. It was a direct challenge to the established norms of aerospace exploration. Musk wasn't just innovating. He was rewriting the rules. But behind closed doors, there were always whispers. Whispers of connections to government agencies that no one, not even Musk, was willing to talk about openly. That was where the USSS badge came into play. Musk had never intended to be tied up with government agencies, at least, not in the way things turned out. But when you're dealing with technology that can change the world, you quickly realize that the world isn't always as open as you'd like it to be. From the first successful launch of the Falcon 1 to the development of the Dragon spacecraft, Musk's innovations attracted the attention of some very powerful people. It wasn't long before the government began to show interest, not just in the rockets, but in Musk himself. In secret meetings with government officials, Musk had been offered a deal he couldn't refuse. SpaceX's technologies were revolutionary, and they could be weaponized. The government saw potential in Musk's ventures, not just for civilian use, but for national security purposes. And so, a deal was struck. Musk's involvement with the United States Secret Service began not out of a desire for power or influence, but out of necessity. He became an unofficial advisor, a player in a game much larger than he had ever anticipated. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. With great power came great scrutiny. Musk found himself navigating a delicate balance between his personal ideals and the pressures of working with the government. What he created was no longer just his. It had become something that many people in power wanted to control. Back in the courtroom, the judge was still processing the shock of the badge. His voice cracked slightly as he spoke again, clearly struggling to regain control. "I believe it's time we cleared up a few things," Harris continued, his gaze still fixed on Musk. Musk didn't flinch either. He knew this was coming, and he was ready for it. The judge, flustered but trying to maintain control, finally asked, "What do you mean by clearing things up?" Harris ignored the question for a moment, instead pulling out a sleek, black tablet and tapping the screen. The images flashed across the display so quickly that it took a second for anyone to process what they were seeing. Photos, locations, conversations. And there, in the middle of it all, was Musk's name, tied to classified meetings and high-level government dealings. The whole room collectively leaned forward, trying to make sense of the data unfolding before them. "I've been assigned to investigate certain matters related to Musk's dealings," Harris said, his voice as calm as the sea before a hurricane. "You see, there's a lot more going on here than a simple lawsuit." He let the words hang in the air. The judge's eyes widened. The room had shifted from courtroom drama to a full-blown government operation. This wasn't just about a legal case anymore. This was about something bigger, a hidden narrative that Musk had been carrying all along. But what the people in the room didn't know was that the story of how Elon Musk ended up here, in this moment, began long before this courtroom drama. Elon Musk's rise to fame hadn't been without its share of obstacles. He didn't grow up in the lap of luxury like some of his tech peers. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, to a Canadian mother and South African father, his childhood had been anything but easy. From an early age, Musk showed an interest in technology, but his family life was far from stable. Musk's relationship with his father, Errol, was strained. Errol was a tough, unforgiving man, one who had little patience for weakness and even less for understanding the unique spark in his son. "Elon, you're not like other kids," Errol would say. "You're different, and different is dangerous." Musk often spent his time with books, exploring the far reaches of his mind and his imagination. He taught himself how to code, and by the age of 12, he created and sold his first video game, Blaster. It was a small step, but it was a step that would change the course of his life forever. As a teenager, Musk faced bullying in school. He was awkward, brilliant, and intensely focused on his own goals. It wasn't until he left South Africa for Canada and eventually made his way to the United States that he truly began to understand his place in the world. "It's not a matter of what I am or what I'm doing, Your Honor," Musk said coolly, turning his attention back to the judge. "It's about what I've seen, what I know, and what's coming next." The room fell into an even heavier silence. For a moment, it seemed as though the clock had stopped ticking. The judge looked between Musk and Harris, his mind racing. "Mr. Musk, are you saying that your business dealings, your entire empire, is a cover for something far more significant? Is this about more than just your companies, your innovations?" Musk nodded slowly, allowing the tension to build. "Yes, Your Honor. It's much bigger than you think." He turned his gaze to the judge with a deliberate calmness that felt like an unspoken challenge. At that moment, Harris stepped forward, placing his tablet down on the judge's desk with an ominous click. He turned to face the room. "Let me put it in simple terms," Harris said. "This trial, this so-called miscommunication with Musk's business partner, isn't just about a lawsuit. It's about something that reaches far deeper into the heart of our nation's security, something that goes beyond business deals, beyond legal contracts, and beyond technology. What's happening here is a direct threat to national safety. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Every pair of eyes was fixed on Harris now. The quiet murmurs that had followed Musk's first revelation had now escalated into a full-blown stir. This wasn't just about a business dispute. It was about a national crisis. Harris continued, his voice unwavering. What Mr. Musk has been involved in, what he's been doing behind closed doors, is not something the public is ready for. Not yet. Musk's expression softened as he looked at the agent. You're right, he said, almost as if he were conceding a point. The world isn't ready for the truth, but soon it won't have a choice. The judge's eyes flickered between the two men, caught between disbelief and a growing realization. He was starting to understand that there was far more at play than he had ever imagined. But why now? The judge finally asked, his voice shaking just slightly. Why reveal all of this today in a courtroom? Why involve me? And why involve the public? Musk didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned toward Harris, as if waiting for him to answer. The agent sighed and stepped forward. You don't understand, Judge. Musk has been dealing with this for years, in secret. This isn't about courtrooms or public perception. It's about saving the future. It's about protecting what we've built, and what could destroy it. Mr. Musk, you're telling me that all of this is connected to the U.S. Secret Service? Musk didn't answer immediately. Instead, he let the silence hang in the air, knowing that the story was only just beginning. I never wanted it to be like this, Musk finally said, his voice low. But sometimes, when you're dealing with the future of humanity, things get complicated. The judge stared at him, his expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief. You're telling me that you've been working with them all along? Musk met his gaze, a small but knowing smile playing at the corner of his lips. Let's just say, the real trial hasn't even begun yet. The courtroom was still frozen in disbelief. The atmosphere felt thick, like a storm about to break. People glanced around at one another, eyes wide, trying to process the bombshell Elon Musk had just dropped. The judge cleared his throat awkwardly, his hand hovering over his gavel, unsure whether to call for an adjournment or to keep pushing through the now ominous case. Musk stood there, still clutching the USSS badge in his hand, his expression stoic and unreadable. Despite the confusion and shock spreading through the room, there was a quiet confidence emanating from him. He knew what he was doing, knew exactly how this was all going to unfold. The silence was interrupted by a voice from the back of the room. Is this a joke? A man in a suit called out, unable to hold back his skepticism. The room echoed with low murmurs of agreement. Musk glanced over at the man, a small, almost imperceptible grin crossing his lips. You can think what you want, he said, his tone firm but unbothered. But this isn't a joke. What's happening here is just the beginning. The judge, still visibly rattled, cleared his throat once more, trying to regain his control over the proceedings. He finally addressed Special Agent Harris, who had been standing silently beside Musk, observing the courtroom's reaction. Agent Harris, the judge began, his voice shaky but authoritative. You have the floor. Explain what all of this means. Are you saying that Mr. Musk is part of a government operation? That this trial is somehow connected to national security? The entire room leaned forward, hanging on every word. Harris stood tall, his face calm and composed as if nothing unusual was happening at all. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say a word, Musk interrupted him. Special Agent Harris, the judge finally said, his voice steady but tinged with confusion. I need to understand what you're saying. Are you implying that this case, this lawsuit, is connected to something far more dangerous? Harris nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. Yes, Your Honor. Much more dangerous. Mr. Musk is not simply a businessman. He's a key figure in a network that has been operating in the shadows for years. And this network? It spans not just our government, but private sectors, foreign governments, and a variety of rogue organizations. The room was on edge. Every set of eyes was on Musk, waiting for him to respond to the accusations. But Musk remained calm. He had expected this moment for a long time. He had lived in the shadows for years, pulling strings, making deals, and trying to shape the future with a quiet force. "The truth, Judge," Musk began, his voice quiet but carrying a weight that filled the room, "is that the world we live in is controlled by a hidden network. A network that works behind the scenes to shape everything. Politics, technology, economy. We're all just puppets." The room was quiet, the collective breath of the people inside the courtroom held in anticipation. The tension was palpable. Could Musk really be telling the truth? Or was this all just a distraction, a smokescreen for something else? Special Agent Harris stood tall beside Musk, his stance unyielding. "Mr. Musk isn't the villain here, Judge," he said, "but he's been pulled into a game that he never wanted to play. He's been pulled into something far darker than any of us realized." Musk looked at Harris, his face unreadable. He didn't disagree with the agent. In fact, he had known that his rise to power would attract the attention of these shadowy figures. But he never expected to be trapped in the middle of their game. The network that Musk was referring to was not just some vague conspiracy theory. It was a real, intricate web of individuals, organizations, and governments who had been operating outside of public scrutiny for decades. These groups, though largely unknown to the general public, had quietly controlled technological advancements, political decisions, and global economic policies. Their primary goal wasn't to dominate the world, but to control the flow of information and power. They thrived in secrecy, manipulating events from the shadows while presenting a facade of normalcy to the world. This hidden network had only grown stronger with time, and Musk, with his innovative technologies, had inadvertently stumbled upon it. SpaceX, Tesla, even his ventures into AI and neural technology, each of these had the potential to disrupt the balance of power in ways no one could have predicted. The room was still. No one moved. No one dared breathe. The weight of Harris's words hung heavy in the air, and it was clear that the trial was no longer just a legal case. It was the tip of an iceberg, one that could change everything. Musk's eyes scanned the courtroom again, observing the faces of the lawyers, the reporters, the onlookers. "I've been part of something bigger than you can imagine," he said, his voice now taking on a tone of finality. "And today, everything changes. The world is watching, but most of you don't even know the real stakes yet." What Musk was referring to, what he knew, was far more than just a series of secret meetings, business dealings, or government contracts. It was about the risks that came with pushing the limits of technology, especially when it came to things like AI, space travel, and surveillance. Musk, the man who had once dreamed of a future where humans were free to explore the stars, had become embroiled in something much darker. A series of events set in motion by an enemy that no one had expected. The government's interest in Musk wasn't just about his innovations. No, they saw Musk as a potential key player in a conflict that stretched across multiple fronts. Musk's space programs, his AI developments, and his companies had all attracted attention from powerful entities, foreign and domestic. Some saw him as a visionary, others saw him as a threat. But the real danger lay in something far more subtle. The technology Musk had developed, specifically the systems that could allow for the surveillance and control of entire populations. Musk had inadvertently unlocked a Pandora's box, a piece of technology that could be weaponized in ways no one had imagined. And the government knew it, but they couldn't control it. Not entirely. Not yet. The judge was starting to grasp the magnitude of what was at stake, but he still couldn't understand why Musk had brought him into this web of secrecy. "Why me?" the judge asked again. "Why bring this to my court? Why not take this to the right authorities?" Musk turned to him, his expression solemn. "Because, Judge, you've been part of this system all along. The very system that's allowed this to grow unchecked. If I didn't bring this to you, to the world, it would never have been stopped." This trial was just the first domino to fall. The judge blinked, a dawning realization coming over him. Musk wasn't just fighting for his reputation. He was fighting for the future. And he had just begun the battle. The gavel struck. The courtroom fell silent once again. But this time, the silence felt charged, tense. The judge's hand trembled slightly as he set it down. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep up this charade of control. The stakes had changed. The entire dynamic of the trial had shifted. What was once a typical business dispute was now a battle over national security and maybe even the world's future. Musk's efforts to push humanity forward into space, to create sustainable energy solutions, and to develop intelligent machines were not just breakthroughs. They were threats to the network's control. His success meant that a significant portion of the world's power and resources might fall into the hands of someone who couldn't be controlled. This was why Musk had been approached by shadowy figures in the government. They saw him as a potential ally in their larger game, someone whose technologies could be harnessed, co-opted, or destroyed. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a wild card. And so, for years, Musk had walked a thin line, participating in secret meetings with powerful government agents, military officials, and shadowy business moguls. He'd been recruited into a covert world where nothing was as it seemed. But as Musk had soon learned, being a part of this world came with its own set of dangers. Musk's relationship with the government had always been a complicated one. At first, his involvement had been straightforward: develop cutting-edge technologies that could revolutionize space travel, energy, and even defense. But as his work progressed, he began to realize the darker implications of the deals he had made. The first real wake-up call came when his team at SpaceX successfully launched the Falcon 9, and shortly after, Musk was invited to a private meeting with high-ranking government officials. It was then that he first learned of the government's true interest in his work, not just for the benefit of humanity, but for national security. "We need you to develop something," one of the officials had said to Musk, "something that can give us an edge in the next world war. Space is the new frontier, and we intend to control it." Musk had balked at the idea. He hadn't built SpaceX to create weapons of war. But he had soon realized that the true power of his technology lay in its dual-use capabilities. SpaceX could be used for peaceful exploration, but its rockets and satellites could also be weaponized for defense and for surveillance. Musk found himself faced with an impossible choice: continue pushing the boundaries of science and technology on his own terms, or fall in line with the government's demands and become part of their growing network. It wasn't long before Musk made a decision. He would not allow his work to be co-opted entirely. But he also knew that the forces he was up against were too powerful for him to fight alone. And so, a delicate balance was struck. Musk would play the game, but on his own terms. However, the more he navigated this shadowy world, the more he saw the darker side of the network that controlled everything. He began to notice the influence of foreign powers, covert alliances, and secret deals being made without the public ever knowing. The deeper he went, the harder it became to distinguish friend from foe. Now, standing in this courtroom with the USSS badge in his hand, Musk knew that the stakes were higher than they had ever been before. The hidden network was no longer a distant threat. It was closing in on him. The moment he had been avoiding, when the truth would come to light, was finally here. "I don't want to be a part of this game anymore," Musk said suddenly, his voice growing stronger. "But I'm already in too deep. And I'm not the only one. There are others who are part of this network. And if we don't act now, we may never have a chance to stop it." The judge, still reeling from everything that had unfolded, stared at Musk for a long moment. The weight of the situation was sinking in. He realized that Musk wasn't just trying to clear his name. He was trying to expose something much bigger, something that no one had anticipated. But how far would Musk go to bring this network to light? What would he risk? And who could he trust? The courtroom doors suddenly opened, and a figure stepped inside, dressed in a dark suit, the same calm demeanor as Harris. "Musk, we need to talk," the new arrival said, his eyes scanning the room, his voice low and urgent. Musk's eyes narrowed as he saw the newcomer. "I thought you'd be here soon," he said, a wry smile playing at the corner of his lips. The figure who entered the courtroom moved with a quiet confidence, but there was something unmistakably ominous about the way he carried himself. His sharp suit and cold, calculating gaze made it clear that he was no ordinary man. Everyone in the room, even Musk and Harris, seemed to recognize that this new arrival was someone who played by an entirely different set of rules. Musk's eyes locked with the man's, and for a brief moment, there was a flicker of recognition. But it was quickly masked by the cool exterior Musk had perfected over the years. He was used to dealing with powerful people, but this man, this shadow agent, was different. The judge looked at the newcomer, his mind racing. He could feel the unease in the room growing. "Who are you?" the judge asked, his voice tentative but firm. The man didn't immediately answer. Instead, he gave a small, almost imperceptible smile, then turned his attention to Musk, who was still holding the USSS badge. There was a brief exchange of unspoken communication between the two men, a silent understanding. "I'm here to ensure things go smoothly," the man said, his voice smooth as silk. His eyes shifted briefly to Harris, then back to Musk. "I trust Mr. Musk has made you aware of the larger implications of this trial, Judge?" The judge's heart skipped a beat. "Larger implications?" he repeated, his voice shaking. "You're telling me this isn't just a lawsuit? That this whole courtroom is part of something bigger?" The man didn't answer directly. Instead, he took a step toward the judge, his movements deliberate. "The world's problems aren't solved in courtrooms," he said cryptically. "They're solved by those who control the flow of information, the flow of power. And right now, Mr. Musk is at the center of that." Musk's face remained neutral, but inside, his mind was spinning. He had known this moment would come, the moment when he would have to confront the reality of the network he was tangled in. But seeing this mysterious figure here, in the heart of the courtroom, made it all feel real in a way he hadn't fully anticipated. The judge, sensing that the situation was quickly spiraling beyond his understanding, leaned forward in his chair. "Who are you working for?" he demanded, his voice louder now. "What is your connection to this network? Why is Mr. Musk involved?" The agent met the judge's gaze with an almost chilling calmness. "The people I work for are not the ones you need to worry about, Judge. You should be more concerned with the people you work for, the ones pulling the strings from behind the curtain." Musk turned his attention back to the agent, feeling a strange mix of curiosity and apprehension. He had always known that there were powerful forces pulling the strings in the background, but this man, this shadow agent, seemed to be the embodiment of those forces. "I've been in this game long enough to know when things have gone too far," Musk said, his voice sharp. "But what you're talking about, this network you're all a part of, this isn't just some conspiracy. This is real." The agent nodded slowly. "It's very real, Mr. Musk, and it's much bigger than you think. You're at the center of it, whether you like it or not." Musk's brow furrowed. "How did I get here?" "I was just trying to build a better future for humanity, to push the boundaries of technology. But now, every move I make feels like it's being watched. Or worse, manipulated." The agent didn't flinch. "That's the nature of power, Mr. Musk. It's not about what you want to build. It's about what you can control, and who you can control it with." Musk stood up straighter, his pulse quickening. "And what exactly are you controlling with? What's the endgame here?" The agent's lips curled into a thin smile. "You're not the first to ask that question, and you won't be the last. But in time, you'll understand. For now, what matters is how you play the game. And you're playing it whether you realize it or not." The agent's cryptic words sent a chill down Musk's spine. He had always been aware of the risks of his work, how his innovations could be used for both good and ill. But he had never truly understood the depth of the game he was playing until now. Harris, who had been silently observing the exchange, finally spoke up. "This is bigger than you think, Judge. It's not just about what Musk has built. It's about how far this network reaches, how deeply it's embedded in the systems we trust. Every government, every major corporation, every intelligence agency, they've all been compromised in one way or another." The judge swallowed hard, his mind racing. "You're telling me that every government I've worked for, every institution I've upheld, is compromised?" "Not compromised," Harris corrected. "Co-opted. The network controls them. And now, it controls you, whether you want to believe it or not." Musk clenched his jaw. He had been close to the truth for years, but the full extent of the conspiracy was becoming clearer with each passing moment. The world he had been trying to shape, one of progress and innovation, was being manipulated by unseen hands. And now, he was caught in the middle of it. "I never asked for this," Musk muttered under his breath. But the agent was quick to respond. "No one ever asks for this, Mr. Musk. Power doesn't wait for permission. It takes control." The judge leaned back in his chair, the weight of everything crashing down on him. He thought of his life, his career. How had it come to this? How had the world he had known turned into something so twisted, so unrecognizable? The agent's gaze never wavered. There's a reason you're here today, Judge. You're not just some bystander in this. You've been a part of the system that allows this network to thrive. And now, you have a choice. You can walk away, pretend you don't know what's happening, or you can join us. Become part of the solution. The judge stared at the agent, his mind reeling. This was no longer a matter of legal proceedings or courtroom drama. This was about survival, about deciding which side of history he would be on. Musk spoke up again, his voice steady, yet tinged with a quiet defiance. I've made my choice, and I'm not walking away. If we're going to stop this network, we'll need to expose it for what it is. We can't let them control everything anymore. The agent's eyes darkened. You think you can stop it? You think you can take down something this powerful? This network has been in place for decades. It's not going to fall because of a single trial, but it can be exposed, Musk countered. And that's where we start. We start by telling the truth. The silence that followed Musk's words hung heavy in the air, thick with tension. The judge shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting between the agent and Musk, trying to make sense of the turn this trial had taken. What was once a lawsuit had now spiraled into something that felt almost like an interrogation, a battle over unseen forces, an intangible game of power and control that no one had expected. Musk, standing tall, locked eyes with the agent. His mind was racing. His decision to expose the hidden network had been made, but the cost of that decision was unclear. As powerful as the forces he was up against were, Musk had spent his entire life defying expectations, breaking through barriers that no one had thought possible. This, though, was different. This wasn't just about rockets or AI. This was about power on a scale that reached far beyond the innovations he had built. The agent, who had yet to offer his name, was studying him carefully, almost as though he were sizing up Musk's next move. The air in the room felt thick, charged with an energy that was impossible to ignore. You think you can just expose the network? The agent said, his voice calm but dripping with quiet menace. You think that will solve everything? The people you're dealing with, these aren't amateurs. This network has its hands in everything. They can erase you before you even realize what's happening. Musk swallowed hard but didn't flinch. That's why I'm not doing this alone. I don't have to fight them alone. The agent smirked, the corners of his mouth curving upward in amusement. You've always had people backing you, haven't you, Mr. Musk? That's how you built your empire. But this isn't the same. No one can save you now. For a brief moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The walls, the judge, the agents, even the courtroom itself. All of it seemed to disappear in the wake of the agent's chilling words. Musk's eyes narrowed. He knew what he had to do. He wasn't just fighting for himself. This wasn't about winning some petty dispute in a courtroom. This was about something bigger, something that could reshape the entire world, if only he could break through the lies. I'm not here to play the game you're talking about, Musk said, his voice firm. I'm here to change the game. I don't care what strings they've pulled or how deep their influence runs. I'll expose them for what they are. The agent's gaze darkened, and for the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. You're being naive, Musk. You don't realize how deep the roots of this network go. They have control over everything, from the media to the military. This trial? It's just a small piece of the puzzle. Musk took a step closer, his resolve hardening. Then I'll be the one to uncover the rest of the puzzle. You can stand in my way all you want, but in the end, the truth will come out. The agent didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze to the judge. Judge, you're in the middle of something far bigger than you realize. I'd recommend you think carefully about where your allegiances lie. Because this trial, this whole case, is nothing but the beginning. Musk's mind churned with the agent's words as he walked out of the courtroom, the weight of the situation sinking in with every step. This was no longer about just winning a case. It was about fighting an unseen war, a war that had been going on for decades without anyone ever realizing it. As he reached the elevator, Harris caught up with him, his face tense. We need to talk, he said, his voice low. Musk didn't respond at first, But as the doors to the elevator slid open, he stepped inside, motioning for Harris to follow. Once the elevator doors closed, Musk turned to Harris. What did he mean by all that? The agent. He knows everything, doesn't he? He's been watching this trial from the start. Harris exhaled, a sigh escaping from his lips. He's right about one thing. This goes deeper than just a business dispute or a courtroom case. The people you're dealing with aren't just in the shadows. They are the system. You've spent years building up your companies, your technologies, thinking that the power you have would make a difference in the world. But the truth is, the network you're fighting against has its hands in every major institution you've ever interacted with. Musk's thoughts raced. You're telling me that the government, the media, and even the tech industry have all been infiltrated? Not just infiltrated, Harris said grimly. Controlled. The people running the show? They don't care about the future of humanity or technological advancement. They care about maintaining their power at any cost. Musk leaned against the side of the elevator, a sense of hopelessness creeping into his chest. So, what now? Do we just give up? No, Harris's voice was resolute. We don't give up. We expose them. Every last one of them. But it won't be easy. We have to be careful who we trust, because there are people close to you who are part of this network. The moment they see you as a threat, they'll come for you. And they won't stop. The elevator doors opened, and the two men stepped out into the hallway. The weight of the situation was heavier than ever, and Musk couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something that could either save or destroy him. He looked over at Harris, a fire igniting within him. I didn't get this far by backing down. Let's go. Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, the agent stood silently as the proceedings came to a close. He had known that Musk would react this way, that he would refuse to back down, that he would try to expose the network. But what Musk didn't realize was how much more dangerous his pursuit of the truth had become. The agent turned to leave, but before he did, he glanced back toward the judge, who was still reeling from the events that had just unfolded. The man was clearly out of his depth, unsure of what to believe. The agent knew that the judge would be forced to make a decision soon, whether to fall in line with the network or risk everything by joining Musk's crusade. But the agent had no doubt about the outcome. The network always got what it wanted. And if Musk thought he could expose them, well, he was about to learn just how far the hidden hand would go to maintain control. Musk and Harris sat in the dimly lit office of one of Musk's tech companies, the hum of servers in the background doing little to drown out the weight of the conversation that hung in the air. Musk leaned forward, his elbows resting on the polished wooden desk, his face tight with concentration. The weight of the agent's warning still pressed down on him. The reality of what they were facing was starting to settle in, and it wasn't something that could be solved overnight. This is bigger than we thought, Harris said, pacing back and forth. He'd been running through possible moves in his mind, but nothing seemed to offer a solution that didn't come with severe consequences. Musk's fingers drummed against the surface of the desk, his mind racing. I've always known that power has a price. That's the cost of building something as big as Tesla or SpaceX. But this is something else. It's not just about technology. It's about control, manipulation, and secrets that go beyond anything I've ever imagined. Harris paused mid-step, turning to face him. You've spent years designing the future, Elon. But the people controlling this network, they don't care about the future. They care about their present, their control. The moment you step into their game, you risk becoming just another pawn. Musk exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. He could feel the weight of the world pressing against him, and for the first time in a long while, doubt started to creep in. So what now? Do we just walk away? Let them win? No, Harris said firmly. We fight. But we have to be smarter than they are. We have to stay ahead of them. If we're going to expose them, we need allies, people who are still outside their grasp. The idea of forming alliances with other outsiders, people who weren't part of the network, seemed appealing. But Musk knew it wouldn't be easy. Every corner of the world he moved in had been infiltrated. Trust was a luxury that had become increasingly rare. Even those closest to him could be compromised, controlled by forces he couldn't yet see. Do you think we can trust anyone? Musk asked, his voice heavy with the realization that the line between friend and enemy had blurred. Harris met his gaze, a rare moment of uncertainty flickering in his eyes. I don't know, but we can't do this alone, and we need to start thinking about how we move, who we trust, because if we're not careful, we'll be exposed before we even get close to the truth. Musk stared at his hands for a moment, as if the answer to their problems might somehow be found in his palms. But all he saw were the calluses of years of hard work, of pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And yet, it felt like none of it mattered now. The systems he had built were the very systems that were now working against him. We need to make a plan, Musk said finally, his voice resolute. We need to find out who's at the top of this network. We expose them. But first, we figure out who they are. The days that followed were a blur of strategy, reconnaissance, and sleepless nights. Musk and Harris moved quickly, gathering what little information they could from their trusted sources. They used every tool in Musk's arsenal: AI, satellite imaging, blockchain technology, and even good old-fashioned surveillance, to try to track the agents and the powerful players behind the network. It wasn't long before they realized just how deeply embedded the network was. The more they dug, the more they uncovered strange patterns, files that had been deleted and rewritten, communications that seemed to come from nowhere, and people who were far more interested in protecting secrets than discovering the truth. Musk had expected challenges. He had expected pushback. But the closer they got, the more dangerous it became. Every lead they followed seemed to lead them into deeper waters. And yet, the agent's words echoed in Musk's mind. They will erase you before you even realize it. It was a chilling thought, one that pushed him to take increasingly risky actions. Musk knew that if he was going to expose the network, he had to be willing to lose everything. One evening, as he and Harris reviewed some encrypted communications from one of Musk's top engineers, they received an unexpected visitor. The door to the office opened slowly, and in stepped a man Musk had never seen before. His face was calm, almost too calm, but there was something about him that felt immediately off. He wasn't here on business. He wasn't here to ask for anything. The stranger stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Harris tensed, but Musk gave a slight nod, signaling him to stay calm. The man didn't wear a suit, but his presence spoke volumes. "I need to speak with you, Mr. Musk," the man said, his voice low but firm. Musk studied him, sensing an immediate threat. "And who are you?" "I'm not here to explain who I am," the man replied smoothly. "I'm here because you're in deeper than you realize. You're playing a dangerous game, and I can offer you a way out." Harris stood up, a warning in his posture. "We don't make deals with strangers." The man's eyes flickered to Harris briefly, but then returned to Musk. "You don't have a choice. You've already made your first move. Now, you need to decide if you want to survive the next one." Musk remained silent for a moment, weighing his options. "And what do you want in exchange?" The stranger's lips curled into a small smile. "Nothing. Just your trust." Musk could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Trust? In a world where nothing was as it seemed, trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. But the man was right about one thing. Musk had already made his first move, and he was too deep into the game to back out now. The network was closing in, and if he didn't do something drastic, they would swallow him whole. "So what's the catch?" Musk asked, his voice tight with suspicion. "No catch," the man replied, his voice smooth. "You just have to accept that the illusion of freedom is exactly that, an illusion. The moment you decided to expose the truth, you signed your name on the dotted line. You're already in the game." The stranger's words settled in Musk's mind as the man turned and walked out of the office, leaving Musk and Harris to digest the meaning behind the brief conversation. The reality of their situation was becoming clearer and much more dangerous. "The illusion of freedom," Harris murmured, his voice tinged with disbelief. "It's all a game, isn't it? Every decision we make, they're all part of their plan." Musk's mind was spinning. The weight of the game they were playing had just gotten heavier. There was no easy way out. There was no simple solution. And the people controlling this network? They were playing with stakes that Musk had never imagined. "We can't stop now," Musk said finally, determination settling in his chest. "But we need to be smarter. The moment we slip up, it's over. The city outside the glass windows of Musk's office glowed under the evening sky, but inside, the tension was palpable. The stranger's words still echoed in Musk's mind, reverberating through every thought he had in the hours since their meeting. The illusion of freedom. It was a concept Musk had heard before but never truly understood until now. Harris was silent beside him, scrolling through a tablet with a furrowed brow. Neither man spoke for several long minutes, both lost in the gravity of what they had just learned. There was no turning back now. They had entered a world where nothing was as it seemed, where every action, every decision, had consequences that stretched far beyond what Musk had anticipated. Finally, Harris broke the silence. "We need to know who's behind this," he said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We can't trust anyone right now, but we have to make sure that the people pulling the strings are exposed before it's too late." Musk nodded. "I've been thinking about that. The problem is, these people, whoever they are embedded in everything. The tech industry, the media, even the government. If we go public with this, they'll shut us down before we can get a foot in the door. But if we don't do something, they'll keep controlling everything, and we'll be nothing more than pawns in their game." Harris glanced at the tablet again, then set it down and met Musk's eyes. "We need to dig deeper. There are people within your network, within your companies, who may be connected to them. We can't trust anyone until we have more information." The idea of betrayal from someone within his inner circle didn't sit well with Musk. He had worked hard to build his companies, to cultivate a sense of loyalty and integrity. The thought that those around him might be compromised was unsettling, but he knew Harris was right. This battle wasn't just about breaking free from the network's influence. It was about finding out who was pulling the strings from the shadows. The silence between them grew heavier, and Musk couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. He had to act fast. The following days were a blur of covert operations and tight-lipped secrecy. Harris's team of trusted allies had been working around the clock, combing through internal communications and analyzing patterns that might indicate any unusual activity within Musk's companies. But so far, there had been no concrete leads, just fragments, pieces of the puzzle that didn't seem to fit. Musk found himself torn between staying within the safety of his company's walls or pushing the limits and risking everything for the truth. He had never been afraid of taking risks before, but this was different. Every choice felt like a step closer to losing everything. It was late one night when Musk received a cryptic message, an anonymous email with a single line of text. "The truth is closer than you think." The words were simple, but they stirred something deep inside Musk. He felt a jolt of adrenaline surge through him. He knew the network was watching, but someone else knew more. Someone on the inside had reached out. Harris was still at his desk, poring over data, when Musk stood abruptly. "I've got a lead. I need to meet someone." Harris's head snapped up, concern flashing across his face. "Elon, don't be reckless. We don't know who we can trust right now. You can't just go off meeting random people." Musk didn't pause. "I have to do this, Harris. I need to know what's really going on. The sooner we find out, the sooner we can take them down." Without waiting for a response, Musk grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Harris was right. Every move he made had to be calculated, but the drive for answers was growing inside him, pushing him to take risks he might not have considered before. Musk met the mysterious source in an abandoned building on the outskirts of the city. The place was far from where anyone would think to look for a clandestine meeting, but that was exactly why it worked. He walked into the darkened warehouse, every step echoing in the silence. The only sound was the hum of distant machinery and the occasional drip of water from a leaky pipe. As he moved deeper into the building, a shadow emerged from the darkness. "You came," a voice said, low and cautious. Musk squinted into the dim light, trying to make out the figure. A man stepped forward, his face obscured by a hood, but Musk could sense the urgency in his voice. The man wasn't someone who was used to making public appearances. "I didn't have much of a choice," Musk replied, his eyes never leaving the stranger's silhouette. The man stepped closer, revealing a hint of recognition in his eyes. "I know you don't trust me, and frankly, I don't blame you. But I'm the only one who can give you the information you need to take them down. You have to trust me if you want to survive." Musk's mind raced. This could be a trap, but he had already committed to this path. The stakes were too high, and the truth was slipping further away with every passing day. Who are they? Musk demanded. Who's running this network? What do they want with me? The man hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as though checking for anyone watching. He leaned in closer and whispered, "The people behind this, they've been manipulating global events for decades. They control everything, tech, finance, even governments. Your companies? They're a threat to them. You're too independent, too powerful. They're afraid of what you represent, an alternate future, one where they don't hold the reins." Musk's heart skipped a beat. So this whole thing, it's about me? About stopping me from exposing the truth? Not just you. It's about control. You're one of the few people who can disrupt their entire operation. That's why they've been watching you so closely. That's why they've infiltrated your businesses, your teams. They've even placed people you trust among you to keep you in check. You think you're the one in control, but you're not. Not anymore. Musk's mind spun with the revelation. His every instinct told him this man was telling the truth, but he also knew that this could be part of the network's plan to mislead him. "How do I know I can trust you?" Musk asked, his voice tight with suspicion. The man's eyes darkened. "You don't. But if you want to know who's truly in control, you'll have to take a leap of faith." Before Musk could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from the entrance. Someone else had arrived. The door to the warehouse creaked open, and Musk's heart sank as a familiar figure stepped into the light. It was one of his own, an executive from Tesla, someone who had been a trusted ally for years. The man's expression was cold, distant. "I knew you'd come here eventually," he said, his voice steely. Musk's blood ran cold. "What are you doing here? How long have you been working with them?" The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled something from his jacket, an emblem, a symbol Musk instantly recognized. It was the same symbol he had seen on the documents tied to the network's activities. The connection was undeniable. "You should have listened to the warnings, Elon," the executive said, his tone laced with regret. "This was never going to end well for you." Musk stood frozen for a moment, staring at the emblem in the executive's hand, the weight of the situation crashing over him. The cold, clinical look in the man's eyes confirmed the worst. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a calculated move, designed to trap Musk in a corner from which there was no escape. Harris's warnings flashed through Musk's mind. "The moment you slip up, it's over." The executive's voice broke the silence, cutting through Musk's thoughts. "You should have known better, Elon. This has been coming for a long time." Musk clenched his fists, feeling a wave of anger rising inside him. Betrayal stung, but it also fueled something darker within him. A need to fight back, to expose the people who were playing him and everyone else. "Who else?" Musk demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "How many of you are in on this?" The executive's lips curled into a faint, almost pitying smile. "There's no one left you can trust. Not in your circle, not in your company, not even the people closest to you. They've been compromised, and you're just now realizing it." Musk's heart pounded in his chest, and for the briefest moment, a flood of doubt washed over him. How deep did this go? How many people had he trusted, had he relied on, who were now playing their part in this larger game? But he couldn't afford to let doubt consume him. He had to think, and he had to act, quickly. "Why? Why do this?" Musk asked, trying to understand the motive behind such a colossal betrayal. "What do you stand to gain from this?" The executive straightened, his gaze never leaving Musk's. "Power. Control. It's always been about that. You were a means to an end. You were useful, until you weren't." Musk's jaw tightened. "You think I'm just going to roll over and let you win?" The executive didn't flinch. "What choice do you have? You're already too far in. The network is too powerful. It's too late to fight back." Just as Musk was about to respond, a sudden noise interrupted their conversation. A distant creaking, followed by hurried footsteps. Someone else was coming. The executive's eyes widened, and for the first time, Musk saw a flicker of fear in his expression. But it wasn't directed at Musk. "Shit," the executive muttered under his breath. "They're here." Musk's heart skipped a beat. They? Who else was involved in this? Had the network anticipated this meeting? Were they watching him right now? Before he could react, the doors to the warehouse burst open, and a team of men in dark suits flooded the room, their movements synchronized, like they'd done this 1,000 times. Musk's mind raced as he scanned the situation. They were everywhere, surrounding him, cutting off any escape routes. "Mr. Musk," one of the men said, his voice cold and authoritarian. "We've been waiting for you." Musk didn't move. There was no escape, no immediate way out. But his mind was working faster than his instincts. This was the moment he'd been preparing for. He could feel the pressure building, but he wouldn't back down. Musk hesitated for only a moment before the urgency of the situation pushed him forward. "Who are you?" he asked as he climbed into the passenger seat. The woman started the car, her hands steady on the wheel. "Someone who's been watching you. Someone who knows what's really going on." Musk felt a wave of suspicion hit him again, but he kept his thoughts to himself. Whoever this woman was, she was offering an escape from the chaos he had just barely escaped. And right now, that was all that mattered. "You've been tracking me?" Musk asked, trying to piece together how she knew so much. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned the car sharply, taking an unexpected route through the city's winding streets. "Yes," she finally said. "I've been tracking you. But more importantly, I've been tracking them." Musk's eyes narrowed. "Them? Who exactly are you talking about?" The woman glanced at him briefly, her expression unreadable. "The people who've been controlling everything from the shadows. The people who've made your life a game." The city flashed by in a blur as the woman behind the wheel navigated the winding streets with practiced precision. The familiar lights of downtown Musk's empire faded into the rearview mirror, replaced by the darkened outskirts of the city. Every turn felt like a step deeper into the unknown, and with every mile, the weight of the situation grew heavier. Musk's heart was pounding, not from the physical exertion, but from the tension that had taken hold of him. He had trusted the wrong people, believed in the wrong alliances, and now he was relying on someone he barely knew. The cryptic message that had led him here, the betrayal, the shadowy men in suits, it was all a bit too much to process. He knew he had no choice but to trust this woman, but every instinct in him screamed for caution. "So, who exactly are you?" Musk finally asked, breaking the silence that had filled the car. The woman's eyes flicked to him for a moment before returning to the road. "Let's just say I'm someone who understands the stakes. I've been working to uncover the network you've walked right into. You don't know the half of it, Elon." Her words sent a chill down his spine. He had always been ahead of the curve, pushing boundaries, expanding frontiers, but now, he was in a battle he couldn't see, one filled with enemies he hadn't even known existed. "What network?" Musk asked, his voice tinged with both curiosity and dread. "What's really going on here?" The woman's lips pressed into a thin line, her expression hardening as she focused on the road. "It's bigger than you think. The people you've been up against, those men in the suits, they're just pawns. The real force behind all of this is an organization so embedded in global systems that you won't even recognize the names involved. You've been fighting the wrong battle all along." The executive who had betrayed him seemed to shift uneasily at the arrival of the suited men. "You should have listened," he said, his tone almost regretful. "There's no going back now." One of the men stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Musk's. "Mr. Musk, you've been an inconvenience for too long. You should have accepted the system when it was offered to you. But now you're a liability." Musk's fists clenched at his sides, but he remained still. He couldn't let fear control him now. "You think you can control me? You've made a mistake." The man in front of him gave a slight nod, and the suited men began to move, surrounding Musk in a tighter formation. Musk knew he couldn't fight them all, but he could try to outsmart them. "Let's get this over with," the leader of the group said coldly. "We'll give you the chance to cooperate, but you'll never be free again. You're too dangerous to leave unchecked." Musk's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm the danger? What if I told you that you've been manipulated just like everyone else? What if I told you the ones controlling this operation are playing you too?" The man smirked, clearly amused by Musk's defiance. "You're delusional. You've been chasing ghosts. The people you think are pulling the strings are already ahead of you. There's no one left to fight for you. The game is over. Musk could feel his pulse quicken as the men in suits took another step toward him. The walls were closing in, and for the first time in his life, he could feel his freedom slipping away. But as they reached out to seize him, something unexpected happened. A flash of light, distant at first, cut through the dim warehouse, and then another. The suited men froze for a fraction of a second, their attention momentarily diverted. That was all the opening Musk needed. Without thinking, he pushed forward, using the surprise to break through the ring of agents surrounding him. He didn't know where the light was coming from, but he didn't care. It was his chance to escape. As Musk ran, he heard the men shouting behind him, their voices rising in panic. But he didn't stop. His mind was focused on one thing: getting out, finding the truth, and exposing the people behind this shadow network that had manipulated his life and his companies. The chase was on. Musk burst out of the warehouse into the cool night air, breathing heavily. He didn't look back. There was no time to waste. He sprinted toward the alleyway where his car was parked, only glancing over his shoulder once to make sure he hadn't been followed. As he reached the car, he saw a figure standing by the driver's side. A woman, tall and confident, her face partially obscured by a hood. She didn't look like someone who should be waiting in a back alley, especially not at this hour. "I wasn't sure you'd make it," the woman said, her voice calm but urgent. "Get in." Musk's mind raced as he processed her words. "What do you mean, embedded in global systems? Are you talking about the government, the military?" The woman shook her head. "No, Elon. Not just that. It's deeper. The tech, the financial sectors, the media, it's all connected. And if you want to make a real difference, you're going to have to take down their entire infrastructure. The network controls everything, including the people you think you can trust." Musk felt a knot form in his stomach. He had always suspected that there was more going on behind the scenes, but he had never imagined the scale of what this woman was describing. For the first time, he felt like a small player in a much larger game, and the realization hit him like a freight train. "How do you know all of this?" Musk asked, his voice quieter now, the weight of the truth settling in. The woman didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned the wheel sharply, pulling the car into a narrow alley that led into a quiet industrial area. "You'll understand soon enough," she said cryptically. "We need to make a stop first. We're not safe yet." As she parked the car in the shadows, Musk glanced around, scanning the area for any sign of danger. But the streets were eerily quiet. The woman unlocked the door and stepped out of the car, motioning for Musk to follow. "Stay close. We don't have much time." Musk hesitated for a moment, then followed her into the darkness, his senses alert to every creak of the pavement beneath his shoes and the faint hum of distant machinery. The building they approached was run down, its exterior barely visible in the dim light of the street lamp. They entered through a side door, and Musk's eyes took a moment to adjust to the dim interior. The air inside was thick with the smell of metal and dust, and the walls were lined with old equipment and machinery that looked like it hadn't been used in years. "We're here," the woman said, her voice low. She led him deeper into the building, past rows of abandoned crates and discarded tools. Finally, they stopped in front of a heavy steel door. The woman pulled out a key card from her jacket and swiped it across the scanner next to the door. It slid open with a mechanical whir, revealing a room that looked nothing like the rest of the building. Inside was a large, high-tech operation, filled with computers, screens, and blinking lights. Musk's eyes widened as he took in the sight. "What is this place?" Musk felt a strange sense of clarity wash over him. This wasn't just about his companies or his ambitions anymore. This was about something far bigger, far darker than he had ever imagined. And the game had just changed. The steel doors slammed shut behind them with a resounding bang, trapping Musk in the high-tech room filled with whirring computers and the faint hum of machinery. His mind was spinning, and his chest tightened as he struggled to process the new reality. The woman, who still hadn't given him her name, was watching him carefully, waiting for him to react. Musk stood motionless, his thoughts colliding in a whirlwind of confusion and betrayal. Peter, was one of his closest colleagues, the man who had been instrumental in shaping Tesla's most ambitious projects. And now, it turned out, he was working for the very people Musk had been fighting against. His mind flashed to their last conversation, the casual talk about tech and innovation, the camaraderie that had once made them so alike. How could he have missed it? But the questions weren't over. "Why didn't you tell me?" Musk asked, his voice low and filled with disbelief. "Why didn't you warn me about this?" Peter smiled, but it wasn't the friendly, warm smile Musk had once known. It was a smile that oozed superiority, as though he had already won. "Warn you?" Peter echoed. "You never would have listened, Elon. You're too focused on your little vision of the future, the one that you think is best. But there's a bigger picture at play here. A much bigger one." The woman stepped forward, her eyes sharp, assessing the situation like a hawk. "This isn't the time for long explanations," she interjected. "We don't have much time. If you're going to fight back, we need to move fast." Musk turned to her, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "What exactly is going on here? Who are you, and why should I trust you?" She didn't flinch at his accusation. Instead, she looked him squarely in the eyes. "Because I'm your only shot. You've been played for far too long, and now it's time to play the game your way. They want control of everything, Elon, but they don't realize that the person they underestimated most is you." The words hit Musk harder than he expected. They felt like a lifeline thrown into an ocean of confusion, but his skepticism kept him rooted in place. There was something about the woman's certainty that was almost hypnotic, compelling, even. "This is where it all starts," the woman replied. "This is one of their hubs. It's where the real control happens." Before Musk could respond, a voice from behind him startled him. "Did you really think you could run forever, Elon?" The voice was smooth and familiar, dripping with a tone of superiority. Musk spun around, his heart racing. Standing there in the doorway was a man he recognized immediately, Peter, one of his most trusted engineers at Tesla. But something was different. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth Musk had always known. "How did you?" Musk started, but Peter cut him off. "You thought you could fight this alone?" Peter's voice was full of disdain. "You should have known better." Musk took a step back, trying to process what was happening. Peter, one of the few people he trusted more than anyone, was standing here, against him. It didn't make sense. "What's going on, Peter? What is all of this?" Peter didn't answer at first. Instead, he glanced at the woman beside Musk, who stood watching the exchange with an unreadable expression. Musk's mind raced. Was this all a setup? Had the woman brought him here to trap him? Peter finally spoke again, his tone almost mocking. "You still don't get it, do you, Elon? This isn't just about you. This is about control, about securing the future." He stepped into the room fully, his eyes never leaving Musk's. "And I'm just here to make sure you don't get in the way." Musk's fists clenched. He had been betrayed by people he considered allies, people he had fought beside to build a future. And now, standing in this room, facing Peter, he was beginning to understand just how deep the network's influence had gone. "You're with them then," Musk said quietly, his voice thick with betrayal. Peter smiled, but it wasn't the smile Musk remembered. It was cold, calculating. "I've always been with them, Elon. From the very beginning. You were just a useful tool." Musk's stomach churned. His mind was spinning with the realization that this wasn't just about tech or business. This was about power, about reshaping the world in ways Musk couldn't even begin to imagine. The woman beside him spoke, breaking the tense silence. "This is bigger than you think, Elon. But the truth is, they've been playing you from the start. They want to reshape the world, and you've been the key to their plans all along." Musk looked at Peter, then back at the woman. "Then why bring me here? Why not just let me fall into their hands?" The woman's eyes softened for a moment. "Because, Elon, you're the only one who can stop this. You're the only one with the resources, the mind, and the determination to take them down. But you have to understand, you're not just fighting a few rogue actors. You're fighting the system itself. Look, I don't know who you are, but you're asking me to trust you with my life." "After everything," Musk said, his voice tinged with frustration. He turned back to Peter, the man who had once been his friend. And then he added, "And you, Peter, how could you?" Peter's face hardened. "It was never about friendship, Elon. It was about the greater good. You could never see the bigger picture. You were always too focused on building your little toys, your shiny tech, and you never stopped to consider the forces behind it all." Musk's gaze narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Peter stepped forward, speaking with an almost evangelical fervor. "The future isn't about Mars or electric cars, Elon. It's about control. It's about shaping humanity into something they can control, something that serves their purpose. You've been a part of their plan from the beginning, whether you realized it or not." The woman spoke again, cutting Peter off. "That's enough, Peter. Let's not waste any more time on your twisted version of events." Peter's eyes flashed with anger. "You can't stop this, you know. You can't even see the full picture. I'll take what I've learned and I'll be ahead of you, always." Musk shook his head, disbelief written all over his face. "So you're just going to keep following orders, no matter the cost?" Peter didn't answer, but Musk could see the faintest hint of regret behind his eyes. It wasn't enough to make him doubt Peter's loyalty to the network, but it was enough to make Musk wonder if there was more to the man's story. Musk turned back to the woman, the mystery surrounding her deepening with every passing moment. "Who are they, then? The ones pulling the strings?" She exhaled slowly, as though considering her next words carefully. "You're about to find out. But first, you need to understand something important. Peter's just a small part of this machine. The real power is hidden deeper. It's an entity that operates in the shadows, influencing governments, corporations, media, even science. They manipulate the global economy, make the decisions that shape the future, all while remaining invisible. You've been living in their world, Musk, and now it's time you wake up to the reality." Musk's mind was racing. This was bigger than anything he could have imagined, bigger than he could have possibly understood just a few hours ago. This wasn't about technology. This was a global conspiracy, one that had wormed its way into every facet of life, twisting it to fit their desires. He stepped forward, his resolve hardening. "And you think I'm the one who can stop it? Just like that?" Musk scoffed, though he didn't really feel the humor. The woman's expression softened, and she nodded, albeit with a look of caution. "Yes, Elon. You've got what they need: resources, intellect, connections. But you also have something they underestimated: the ability to inspire, to lead, to rally the right people around you." Musk's mind was still spinning, but something in her words resonated with him. He had always been someone who could rally people, someone who could see beyond the horizon, someone who knew how to inspire innovation. But this was something else. Peter, on the other hand, was done with talking. He turned to leave, his back to Musk as he headed toward the exit. "I'm not the one you should worry about," Peter said over his shoulder. "The real enemy is much closer than you think." As the sound of Peter's footsteps faded into the distance, Musk and the woman were left alone in the room. Musk's thoughts were scattered, his sense of clarity wavering. His mind couldn't reconcile the magnitude of what he was hearing. But deep down, he knew one thing. He was at the epicenter of something huge. "Do you know who they are?" Musk asked, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling within him. The woman didn't answer immediately, as though the question required careful consideration. Finally, she spoke. "Yes, I do. But we don't have the luxury of time to explain every detail. Right now, we need to move." Musk was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Where are we going?" She turned toward the back of the room, typing a few commands into the console on one of the desks. "We're going to find the heart of this operation. There's a facility in the mountains, isolated from everything, where they coordinate their global operations. That's where the real answers lie. And that's where we'll put an end to this." Musk felt a surge of determination. He wasn't sure if he could trust the woman completely, or if Peter had been telling the truth, but one thing was clear. The fight for control was only just beginning, and he wasn't about to back down now. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The cold wind bit at Musk's face as he stood in front of the nondescript building nestled at the base of the mountain. The place looked like an abandoned research facility, a far cry from the high-tech labs Musk was used to. But there was an eerie silence around this place, a kind of isolation that felt unnatural, as though this mountain had secrets buried deep within it that were meant to stay hidden. The woman, whose name Musk had yet to learn, stood beside him, her eyes scanning the darkening horizon, alert as ever. They had driven for hours, leaving the city lights far behind, until the winding road had taken them to this remote location. Musk felt a mix of unease and determination stirring in his chest. This place held the answers, but at what cost? "We're here," the woman said, her voice quiet but resolute. Musk glanced at her, his mind still a whirlwind of questions. What exactly is in this building? Is it really the heart of their operation? She nodded. This is where they plan their moves. Everything is controlled from here. The economy, politics, even the social narratives. The facility itself is a hub, and it's tightly guarded. We'll need to move carefully. Musk's brow furrowed. How do you know all of this? She didn't respond immediately, but Musk noticed a flicker of something in her eyes, a fleeting moment of hesitation. Because, she said finally, I've been tracking them for years, and I've seen the way they work. This facility isn't just a place of power, it's their control center. If we can access their main server room, we can get the proof we need to expose everything. We'll have leverage. Musk's thoughts began to race again. Leverage. Proof. He had always prided himself on the transparency of his work, on the idea that technology could be a force for good in the world. But this was something entirely different. There were people, powerful, unseen people, who had been manipulating everything for their own gain. If what she said was true, then this wasn't just about one man, one company, or even one government. It was about a network that controlled the course of history. How many people are in there? Musk asked, already anticipating the answer. Too many, the woman replied, her voice clipped. We can't take them all head-on. But if we can get inside undetected, we might just stand a chance. They won't expect us. Not yet. The words hung in the air as Musk felt the weight of the situation sink in. He had never backed down from a challenge before, but this was different. This wasn't just a business venture. This was a fight for the future, for the freedom of the very systems he had once helped build. What's the plan? Musk asked, his voice steady despite the pressure mounting in his chest. The woman studied him for a moment before nodding to herself, as though she had made a decision. We'll split up. I'll find the access point to the main server room. You stay close to the security system controls. We disable their surveillance first, and then we move in. Musk hesitated, then nodded in agreement. The risks were high, but the prize was worth it. If they could gain access to the main server, they could uncover everything. The truth about the network, the people controlling the world, and how they had been manipulating the events unfolding around them. As they made their way toward the building, Musk's mind was racing. Peter's words echoed in his ears, but so did the woman's. You're the only one who can stop this. Was that true? Could he really be the one to take down a global network that had its claws in everything? The facility loomed ahead, its dark, cold structure standing like a monolith against the jagged mountain backdrop. They reached the door, which was reinforced with layers of steel and security measures that Musk knew would make it nearly impossible for an intruder to break in. But for him, it was child's play. With his mind racing through the engineering of it all, Musk began working his way through the security system, hacking into the building's infrastructure from the outside, bypassing layers of encryption and firewalls with ease. Done, Musk said, barely a minute later. The door unlocked with a soft click. We're in. The woman gave him a nod, then led the way as they entered the building. The air inside was cold, with the smell of metal and chemicals hanging in the stale atmosphere. The faint hum of electricity filled the silence as they moved deeper into the labyrinthine hallways, their footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. We're close, the woman murmured. Musk's heart began to pound in his chest as they reached the first set of security doors. He glanced over at her. You sure about this? We're about to walk into the belly of the beast. She gave him a cold smile, one that sent a chill down his spine. This is the only way, Elon. We either do this now, or we let them control everything. He didn't hesitate. The woman wasn't lying. This was their chance. It was time to stop running and start fighting. They bypassed more security measures, sliding past cameras and motion sensors, staying in the shadows as much as possible. Musk's thoughts were clear now. He wasn't just a businessman anymore. He wasn't just a CEO or an inventor. He was a man with the power to make a real difference. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. Finally, they reached a large, reinforced door. The woman moved toward a hidden panel beside it, her fingers dancing across the controls. A soft beep echoed through the hallway, and the door clicked open. Inside was the heart of the operation. Row upon row of servers, glowing with digital light, the lifeblood of the network. Musk's eyes widened as he took in the sight. This was where it all came together. This was where the future of the world was being shaped, manipulated, controlled. The woman moved toward the central console, typing commands into the system with precision. We don't have much time. Once they realize we're here, they'll lock down the building. We need to extract the data and leave before that happens. Musk stepped forward, his eyes scanning the room. His mind was racing. This was it, the moment where everything could change. But as the woman continued to work, the ground beneath them began to tremble. A low, ominous rumble echoed through the building, shaking the walls. Musk's eyes snapped to hers. "What the hell was that?" he asked. The woman's face went pale. "They've triggered the lockdown." The rumble that reverberated through the walls of the facility was only the beginning. As the lights overhead flickered, a loud mechanical whine filled the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of massive steel doors grinding shut. The lockdown had begun. Musk's heart pounded in his chest as he exchanged a brief look with the woman. Her face was set in a grim expression, but there was no sign of panic. She'd expected this. "Get to the servers. We need the data," she said, her voice now sharp with urgency. Musk nodded, adrenaline surging through his veins. He wasn't about to let everything fall apart now, not when they were so close. He quickly scanned the room, looking for the central terminal. There, in the back corner, a large console stood in the center of a circular array of servers, its monitors flickering to life. But the woman was already ahead of him, moving swiftly toward it. "I'll handle this. You keep an eye out for anyone coming," she ordered, her movements calculated and precise. Musk didn't argue. Instead, he stood near the door, every nerve on edge as he listened for any sound of approaching security personnel. He had been in tight situations before, evading government oversight, hacking systems, but something about this felt different. The stakes were higher. This wasn't just a business venture. This was a battle for the future of everything. As the woman typed furiously at the console, Musk's mind raced. The lockdown was a calculated move. Whoever controlled this facility had to know that the data here was more than just information. It was power. Absolute power. If they couldn't get the data and get out before the building was sealed tighter than a fortress, the entire mission would fail. "Just a few more seconds," the woman murmured, her fingers a blur over the keyboard. Musk's eyes darted around the room, watching for any signs of movement. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. The building seemed to hum with the energy of its impending lockdown. The second the doors fully sealed, they would be trapped inside, and Musk had no intention of spending the rest of his life in some high-tech prison. Then came the sound they had been dreading, the unmistakable hiss of a door opening from down the hallway, followed by footsteps, too many of them. Musk's pulse quickened. "Move," he said urgently, but the woman didn't flinch. She was still typing, her eyes locked on the screen. "Musk, get ready," she replied, her voice calm despite the growing noise. "They're coming. I've almost got it." Musk didn't waste another second. He grabbed the nearest object he could use as a weapon, a metal pipe lying near one of the server racks, and moved to position himself behind a nearby column. The footsteps grew louder, echoing down the narrow corridor toward them. His mind was focused, calculating his next move. The facility's security system had to be linked to the central console, and he was fairly certain he could override it, but he needed time. He just had to hold out a little longer. The footsteps stopped abruptly. The door to the server room opened with a soft hydraulic hiss, and several men in tactical gear stepped inside. They were armed, moving in precise, coordinated formations, trained professionals, no doubt. Musk's heart pounded. There was no way they could fight their way out of this, not against these odds. His eyes quickly flicked to the woman. She hadn't even noticed the intrusion yet. He couldn't risk them both being caught. He had to act. "Hey!" Musk called out, his voice louder than he intended. "I wouldn't come any closer if I were you." The guards froze, their heads snapping toward him. For a split second, Musk saw doubt flicker in their eyes. Who was this intruder, and how did he know their plans? But then, as expected, the leader of the group gestured for the others to move in. Musk's grip tightened around the pipe as he prepared for the worst. But before the guards could take another step, a sound came from behind them. It was the unmistakable sound of a locking mechanism engaging, heavy metal doors sealing them in. The leader spun around in alarm. What the hell? The lockdown's been triggered? Get to the control room now. Too late for that. The woman's voice rang out from across the room. She had finally finished what she was doing at the console. The data transfer had begun. The men spun back toward her, realizing too late what was happening. "You're not getting away with this," the leader snarled, stepping forward, his gun raised. But the woman was already 2 steps ahead. With a flick of her wrist, a flash of light blinked from the console, and then the lights flickered. The men's weapons immediately deactivated, rendered useless in an instant. The woman's fingers flew over the keyboard, and one by one, the security systems across the building blinked off. "You've been compromised," she said coldly, her tone filled with authority. Musk took the opportunity, charging toward the closest guard and knocking him off balance with a well-placed strike to the shoulder. The man fell back, hitting the floor with a thud. Before the others could react, Musk ducked behind one of the servers, out of sight. The woman's voice cut through the chaos as she gave him a signal to hold his position. "Stay low," she called. "The data's almost transferred. We just need a few more seconds." Musk's pulse was racing as the guards scrambled to regain control. The leader barked orders, but Musk could see the uncertainty in his eyes. They were out of their depth. The tide was turning, and Musk could feel it. He wasn't alone anymore. They had the power now. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. The fight wasn't over yet. There was still one final hurdle to cross: getting out of here alive. Seconds later, the woman called out again, this time with triumph in her voice. "Done. The data's ours." But as she spoke, the ground trembled again. This time, it wasn't just the building's automated systems. It was the sound of something massive moving, something far too close. Musk's eyes widened. "What is that?" The woman didn't have time to answer. The door at the far end of the server room began to open again, and this time, it wasn't the guards. Something much worse was coming. The ground shook once again, this time with a deafening intensity that sent ripples through the walls. The lights flickered violently, casting long, unnatural shadows across the room. Musk's heart pounded in his chest, his instinct screaming that something far more dangerous than guards was heading their way. "What the hell is that?" he demanded, eyes darting around the room. The woman's expression had shifted from determined to something closer to fear. For the first time since they entered the facility, she was visibly rattled. "Get down," she shouted. Before Musk could react, the door at the far end of the server room slid open with a mechanical groan. What emerged was no mere human, or even a squad of guards. The figure that stepped into the room was far larger, far more intimidating. It was a towering exoskeleton of metal, sleek and black, with glowing red lights pulsing ominously along its joints. It was a machine, an advanced combat droid or something far worse. Musk's blood ran cold. "What the hell is that thing?" he hissed, his voice barely audible over the hum of the massive machine's movements. The woman didn't answer right away. She just moved swiftly toward a stack of crates near the back of the room, pulling Musk down with her. As they crouched behind cover, the machine scanned the room, its mechanical eye sweeping across the space with terrifying precision. It moved like a predator, calculating its next move. "This is bad," the woman finally whispered. "They've been working on these for years." "This," she nodded toward the droid, which was now methodically searching the room, "is part of their contingency plan. If anyone ever got close to the data, they unleashed the beast." Musk's mind raced as he processed the situation. They were in a high-security facility, surrounded by armed personnel, and now they were facing a military-grade AI-controlled combat unit. The idea of just walking out the front door had become a distant fantasy. They needed a way out, and fast. Is there any way we can disable it? Musk asked, his voice low and urgent. The woman shook her head. It's not that simple. The beast is designed to adapt. It's equipped with self-repairing technology and countermeasures to any form of hacking. We need to use its own weaknesses against it. Musk's mind whirred. He had faced challenges before, but nothing like this. His usual solutions, technical know-how, innovative designs, seemed useless against a machine like this. This was something built with one purpose: to eliminate threats. We have to get to the control room, Musk said, his eyes narrowing. There has to be a way to shut it down from there. The woman hesitated, clearly weighing the odds. We'll never make it. Not with that thing on the loose. Musk glanced at her, determination rising in his chest. We don't have a choice. It's the only way. The woman stared at him, then nodded reluctantly. She didn't argue. All right, but we'll need to move quickly. We're on a timer now. If it's activated, it'll be tracking us the entire time. Musk's thoughts snapped into focus. He knew how systems like these worked. If they could get to the control room before the machine had fully adapted to their presence, they might be able to override it. Together, they crawled silently behind the crates, each step careful, measured. The beast's mechanical growls reverberated through the room, its sensors flicking in their direction with terrifying accuracy. Every move was calculated. Every moment stretched, and with each second, the machine grew closer to pinpointing their location. Stay close, the woman whispered. We need to get to the hallway and move toward the secondary lift. If we can make it there, we can use the maintenance shaft to get to the control room. But we can't let it catch us. Musk nodded. I've got it. Let's move. They waited for the right moment, watching as the beast's glowing eyes scanned the room one last time before it began to turn. As soon as it was facing the other way, they darted out from their cover, moving swiftly but cautiously toward the hall. Every muscle in Musk's body was tense, his every instinct screaming that they weren't moving fast enough. The sound of their footsteps seemed louder than ever, but they had no choice. The machine's head snapped back around. Its sensors locked onto them in an instant. The eerie red glow of its optics cut through the shadows, focusing directly on Musk and the woman. The pursuit had begun. Go, go, Musk shouted, his voice now raw with urgency. They sprinted down the corridor, weaving between columns and crates. The beast wasn't far behind, its heavy footsteps thundering in the distance. The walls around them seemed to close in, and the weight of their situation pressed on Musk's chest like a vice. The woman led the way, her path clear and purposeful. We're almost there, she said, though her voice was strained. Just as they reached the maintenance lift, Musk's eyes scanned for the access panel. He had to hack it. Fast. His fingers flew over the panel, overriding the security locks in seconds. But as the doors opened with a hiss, the beast was upon them. With one swift motion, it launched forward, its heavy metallic foot crashing against the floor. Musk and the woman scrambled inside the lift just as the doors began to close. The machine reached out with a powerful arm, its fingers barely missing them as the lift doors slammed shut. The lift began to descend, but Musk could hear the beast pounding against the steel doors from above, trying to force its way through. The sound was deafening, each hit reverberating through the entire shaft. The woman turned to Musk, her face pale but resolute. We need to disable it before it catches us again. The control room is just below us. We can get there in time if we hurry. Musk nodded, his mind already working through the problem. He had been in tight spots before, but this was something different. He had to think fast. The lift slowed as it approached its destination, and Musk braced himself for the next phase of the mission. But even as they readied themselves to step out into the control room, he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about stopping a conspiracy anymore. This was a fight for survival. The lift finally came to a halt with a soft, grinding noise, and the doors opened to reveal a dimly lit hallway. It was narrow, lined with thick steel walls, and eerily quiet. The air smelled stale, tinged with the metallic scent of the building's infrastructure, but there was no time to savor the silence. Musk could still hear the beast's relentless pounding from above, and the heavy metallic clangs seemed to echo down the shaft, like the drumming of an inevitable fate. "We need to move," the woman said in a hushed tone, her voice barely above a whisper. Her expression was tight, the urgency clear in her eyes. She glanced over her shoulder, as if expecting the beast to burst through at any moment. "Down the hall to the left, there's an access door that leads into the main control room. We're almost there." Musk nodded, his breath shallow, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Every part of him screamed to go faster, but he knew they couldn't afford to make a sound now. The slightest misstep could lead to disaster. They had no choice but to keep moving with stealth and precision. They walked as quickly as they dared, Musk glancing over at the woman, whose calm demeanor masked the tension in the air. Musk had faced his fair share of life-or-death situations, but this was something else. This wasn't just about escaping. It was about taking down something far bigger, something far darker than either of them had anticipated. Every corner they turned brought them closer to the heart of the operation, and the knowledge that they were about to face the mastermind behind it all hung heavily over Musk's thoughts. They reached the access door without incident, and the woman immediately moved to the keypad beside it. Her fingers flew over the buttons, bypassing security in seconds. Musk kept watch, his eyes scanning the hallway behind them, though he could feel his heart thumping louder in his ears with every passing second. The door opened with a soft hiss, and they slipped inside. The control room was a stark contrast to the dim hallways. It was a massive, high-tech hub, lined with rows of monitors and flashing lights. A colossal central screen dominated one wall, displaying real-time data and surveillance footage from all corners of the facility. It was the nerve center of the entire operation, a place where the fate of not just this building, but potentially the world, was being decided. Musk could feel the weight of it all pressing down on him as he stepped forward. This was the place where the conspiracy they'd been fighting against came to life, where decisions were made that affected millions, where the true power lay. And yet, in that moment, it felt like just another room. The same cold, sterile environment he had faced countless times in the past. "Stay close," the woman whispered, leading Musk to a central terminal. She moved with purpose, her fingers tapping across the screen with practiced ease. "I'm going to try to access the core systems. We need to shut everything down before the beast finds us. If we don't, we won't have a chance," Musk finished, his voice grim. The sound of the beast's footsteps reverberated through the building again, this time much closer. Musk's stomach tightened. The droid was relentless, and they didn't have much time. His mind raced as he looked at the array of screens, trying to piece together any kind of plan. The woman's hands were a blur on the terminal, her focus absolute as she bypassed layers of encryption. Just as Musk turned to check the door again, the central screen flickered, and then it went black. His heart skipped a beat. "What happened?" he asked urgently, spinning around. The woman's face had gone pale. "The system, it's been locked out. Someone's remotely taken control." "How is that even possible?" Musk demanded. "This is the control room. Everything should be here." But the woman didn't answer. Her eyes narrowed as she worked furiously to regain access. Her fingers flew over the screen, and the room seemed to hold its breath as she tried to outpace the intruder. Finally, the screen flickered back to life. But this time, the data wasn't the usual technical readout. It was a message. A face appeared on the central screen. An image of a man, wearing a tailored suit, his expression cold and unreadable. He was sitting behind a massive desk in a lavish office, the kind Musk had only seen in corporate boardrooms, a place of power. His eyes were intense as they stared directly into the camera. "Well, well," the man said, his voice smooth, almost amused. "Elon Musk. I was wondering when you'd show up." Musk froze. He had expected everything from this operation. Secrets, danger, conspiracy. But this was something else entirely. This man on the screen. He was the one in control. The one pulling the strings. "You must be the one behind all this," Musk said, his voice low, barely concealing his growing fury. The man on the screen smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Not exactly. You see, Mr. Musk, I don't just control the facility. I control everything you've been trying to stop. Musk's stomach sank. He knew, in that moment, this was bigger than any one person. The man on the screen wasn't just a figurehead. He was the mastermind. And everything Musk had believed, everything he had worked for, was now under direct threat. You think you can just walk in here, take our data, and shut us down? The man's voice was now tinged with contempt. You've underestimated me, Elon. And now, you'll pay the price. The woman stepped forward, her face hardened with resolve. You're not getting away with this. The man chuckled darkly. We'll see about that. The screen flickered again, and before Musk could react, the entire control room plunged into darkness. The hum of the servers died, and a deep silence settled over the room. The only sound was the thumping of Musk's heart. What did he do? Musk muttered, scrambling for his bearings. I don't know, the woman said, her voice tight. But we need to move now. Before they could make another move, the doors to the control room slammed shut with a deafening clang, locking them inside. Musk's pulse raced. He had no idea what the man had just activated, but it was clear. The stakes had just escalated. We need to get to the backup power systems, Musk said urgently. If we don't restore power, we'll be trapped in here, and we won't be able to stop him. The woman's eyes flicked to the monitors on the walls, her mind already working. I know where the backup systems are, but we'll have to get past the beast. Musk nodded grimly. We've got no choice. The darkness inside the control room felt suffocating, a cold, oppressive blanket that threatened to swallow them whole. Musk's pulse thudded in his temples, and the woman's quick breaths echoed in the silence. The only remaining light came from the dim glow of the emergency exit sign, flickering weakly at the far end of the room. They had seconds, maybe less, to make a move. I can't see anything, Musk muttered, squinting in the low light. The woman's hands flew over a small emergency console beside them, her fingers working with a frantic urgency. We've been locked out of the primary systems, but I can still access the backup. If I can get it online, we might be able to override the lockdown. Musk nodded, his mind still reeling from the face on the screen. This wasn't just some tech conspiracy. Whoever was behind this had far greater resources at their disposal. This was about control on a level Musk had never imagined. The man he'd seen earlier, calm and collected, was only the beginning. There were far more dangerous people pulling the strings, and they weren't going to stop. A low, mechanical hum suddenly cut through the silence, and the overhead lights flickered back to life, casting the room in stark white fluorescence. Musk squinted, temporarily blinded by the harsh light, and turned his attention to the woman, who was still frantically working at the console. She paused for a moment, her fingers hovering above the keys. It's working, she said, her voice filled with a faint hint of relief. But that relief was short-lived. As soon as the backup systems came online, the central monitor blinked to life, displaying a countdown. Red numbers flashed on the screen, ticking down faster than Musk's heart could keep up with. What the hell is that? Musk asked, stepping forward. Self-destruct sequence, the woman said grimly. It's a failsafe. If anyone tries to mess with the core systems, it triggers the countdown. We've got about 10 minutes before this place goes down in flames. Musk's stomach dropped. 10 minutes? How do we stop it? The woman's fingers flew over the keys again, trying to cancel the sequence, but the system was fighting her every step of the way. It's encrypted. I'm trying to bypass it, but we don't have much time. Musk's mind raced. This was exactly what they had feared, a trap. The mastermind hadn't just locked them in. He had triggered an irreversible countdown, and now they had to escape or face the consequences. But escape wasn't as simple as running out of the building. No, they had to shut down the system, stop the beast, and somehow make it to the exit all within 10 minutes. Can you stop it? Musk asked, forcing his mind to focus on the problem at hand. I'm trying, she replied, not looking up from the console. The system is locked down tighter than a vault. But, she paused, her fingers still working furiously. If I can get into the core network, I might be able to disable the trigger. Musk turned his gaze toward the hallway beyond the control room. The beast was still out there, somewhere, hunting them. The countdown was ticking, but so was the threat of the machine. "We don't have 10 minutes. We need to move," Musk said, his voice tight with urgency. The woman looked up at him, her face flushed with exertion. "I can't just leave the system. I can't risk it going off while we're halfway out." Musk didn't hesitate. "I'll handle the beast. You focus on stopping the countdown." The woman's eyes widened. "What? You can't be serious." "The beast will. I don't have a choice." Musk cut her off. "You're the only one who can stop the sequence. We're out of options." For a brief moment, he could see the hesitation in her eyes, but she didn't argue. With a sharp nod, she turned back to the console. "Fine, but be careful." Musk didn't waste another second. He turned on his heel and sprinted toward the door. His mind was already working, planning the route he would take. The beast had to be near, but if he could get ahead of it, distract it long enough, the woman would have a chance to shut everything down. As he stepped out into the hall, his senses were on high alert. Every shadow seemed to conceal a threat, every creak of the building's aging infrastructure making him flinch. He took slow, deliberate steps, moving like a shadow, his heart pounding in his chest. The beast was out there somewhere, but where? And then, as if on cue, a loud mechanical whine echoed through the hall. Musk froze. The sound was unmistakable. The beast was coming. It was close, its powerful limbs thundering across the metal floors as it moved toward him. Musk's grip tightened on the pipe he had grabbed earlier, his fingers going cold around the handle. This was it. The time for hesitation was over. The beast rounded the corner, its red optics gleaming in the dim light. Musk's breath caught in his throat as he assessed the situation in an instant. The machine was more than just a weapon. It was a calculated, adaptive force. But Musk had one thing on his side: unpredictability. And that was something the beast couldn't anticipate. Musk lunged forward, swinging the metal pipe with all his might. It connected with the beast's side with a deafening clang. For a moment, the droid staggered back, its mechanical body groaning as the impact reverberated through its frame. But it didn't stop. The beast didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. It immediately locked its sensors on Musk, its red eyes narrowing. "I can't do this alone," Musk muttered to himself, his mind racing for a plan. He needed to slow it down. But how? He backed up, knowing he couldn't take the beast head-on. His eyes darted around the hallway, searching for anything that could give him an edge. And then, his gaze landed on the emergency maintenance hatch above him. Without thinking, Musk grabbed the nearest tool and used it to wrench open the hatch. The beast lunged at him, but Musk had already scrambled up the ladder, pulling himself into the dark shaft just as the beast slammed into the wall below. It howled, but it couldn't follow him. Musk breathed a sigh of relief, just for a moment. He still had to make it to the backup power systems, and the beast wasn't the only danger in the building. The countdown was still ticking, and time was running out. Musk's hands were slick with sweat as he clambered up the maintenance shaft. The beast's mechanical roars reverberated through the walls, echoing off the metal as if the machine was searching for him, trying to track his every move. His heart thudded in his chest, each beat reminding him of the countdown that continued to tick relentlessly, faster and faster, toward zero. He pulled himself up another rung, his mind racing as his body moved on instinct. The hatch above him was his only route out, but there was no telling how far the beast would chase him, how long it would take before it found a way to follow. Musk didn't have time to think about the beast now. The countdown was more pressing, and he couldn't let it slip away. Each second he spent in the shaft felt like an eternity. He could feel the hum of the building's systems, but there was something unsettling about the stillness. The lights flickered above him, casting erratic shadows on the metal walls. It was like the building itself was alive, waiting for something catastrophic to happen. His grip tightened on the ladder as he reached the top of the shaft. He could see the faint outline of a door, half hidden behind some piping and wires. This had to be the access to the power core, the room that controlled the backup systems. He could only pray it wasn't locked. With a deep breath, Musk reached for the door handle, his fingers trembling slightly. The cold metal bit into his skin as he pulled it open. He stepped into a narrow hallway, the hum of power surging through the walls. The walls were lined with thick cables and large control panels, their blinking lights an eerie reminder of how much was at stake. He couldn't waste time. He had no idea how long the woman had left before the system locked them out completely, or how close the beast was to finding him. Musk moved quickly, his footsteps echoing in the hallway as he followed the signs leading toward the power control room. His mind kept flashing back to the earlier conversation with the woman, the countdown ticking ever closer. He knew if he didn't reach the core in time, they were all finished. This entire facility would be reduced to rubble, and no one would be left to stop the machine or the mastermind behind it. The woman's voice echoed in his memory. "You're the only one who can stop this, Elon. It's not just about escaping. We need to shut this down. Now." He gritted his teeth. "I won't fail," he thought. "Not today." As he neared the control room, his fingers fumbled over the door panel. He didn't have a keycard, and the system was still in lockdown mode. But Musk had learned long ago that there was always a way in. He found a maintenance override switch and yanked it open, using the makeshift tool he had grabbed earlier. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing the power core room. It was massive, lined with high-tech servers and glowing screens that illuminated the space in an eerie, otherworldly glow. The heartbeat of the entire facility pulsed through the air, and Musk could feel the weight of it pressing down on him. He approached the central console, where a holographic interface projected out into the air, displaying a complex network of systems and data streams. His fingers hovered over the controls. But then, just as he was about to initiate the shutdown sequence, the central screen flashed red. A voice, cold, calm, and condescending, came through the speakers. "Did you really think you could stop this, Elon?" Musk froze. The familiar face of the man from the screen appeared again, his expression cold and smug. It was clear that he was the one pulling the strings, the one behind the entire operation. And now, Musk was standing in the very heart of it all, playing right into his hands. "You're too late," the man said, leaning back in his chair. "The countdown is irreversible. In a few minutes, this building will be gone, and so will you." Musk's mind raced. This was no longer just about survival. It was about stopping a far greater threat than he had imagined. The mastermind wasn't just trying to eliminate him. He was trying to erase the entire facility, to wipe out everything that stood in his way. "Not if I can help it," Musk growled, his fingers working quickly to override the system. "You're not going to get away with this." The man on the screen laughed, a deep, unsettling sound that reverberated through the speakers. "You're welcome to try. But the key here isn't just in stopping the countdown. It's about control, Elon. And you," he paused, his eyes narrowing, "you've just walked into the lion's den." Musk felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. He wasn't alone. Before he could react, the power flickered, and the entire control room went dark again. The only light came from the faint glow of the emergency systems, casting long shadows that twisted and writhed on the walls. Musk's heart pounded. He knew what this meant. It was happening. The beast wasn't just hunting him. It had been activated as a final measure, a safeguard to ensure that no one would leave alive. The loud, unmistakable hum of the beast's engine filled the room, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps. Musk's breath caught in his throat as he turned sharply to face the doorway. The metal door buckled and groaned as the beast pushed through it, its red optics glowing menacingly in the dark. It was here, and there was no escaping it. Musk reached for the control panel in front of him, his mind racing to find the one last way to disable the beast, to disable everything. He couldn't let this be the end. Focus. Breathe. His fingers moved quickly over the touchscreen, pulling up the shutdown protocols, but the beast was closing in too fast. Musk knew that if he didn't act now, the countdown would finish and the entire facility would be obliterated. "I won't let you win," Musk said under his breath, as the beast moved closer. With one final, desperate lunge, Musk hit the override button. The entire system groaned, lights flickering wildly. The beast paused for a fraction of a second, but that was all Musk needed. The holographic interface above him pulsed and went silent, and then everything stopped. The countdown froze. The beast stopped dead in its tracks, as if suddenly unsure of its next move. For a moment, The world seemed to hold its breath. Musk stood frozen, staring at the still form of the beast, its glowing red optics locked on him as if it were deciding whether to resume its pursuit or stand idle, awaiting further orders. The building, once alive with the sounds of machines, seemed eerily silent now. No hums, no whirring of motors. Only the faint, oppressive atmosphere of a facility on the brink of total collapse. He couldn't relax. Not yet. The countdown had stopped, but that didn't mean they were out of danger. The mastermind behind all of this hadn't shown his hand completely. Musk had no idea what other traps lay in wait, and the voice on the intercom, the chilling taunt of the mastermind, still echoed in his ears. "You've walked into the lion's den, Elon." The words gnawed at Musk's mind as his fingers hovered over the control panel. He knew he had just bought himself some time, but how long would it last? And more importantly, what was the real plan here? This wasn't just about stopping a countdown. It was something much bigger. The beast remained motionless, and Musk took one tentative step toward the control panel, fingers tapping the console. He needed to get to the backup systems, find the root of the problem. If he could do that, if he could hack into the mainframe and seize control of the facility's primary systems, then he might just be able to end this once and for all. Just as he was about to type in the override commands, he heard a sound behind him, a faint click, like a switch being thrown. Musk whipped around, his breath catching in his throat. The woman, his only ally, was standing in the doorway, her face pale but determined. She had made it through the chaos. Against all odds, she had managed to evade the beast and reach him. He hadn't expected her to find him, especially not after everything that had happened. But here she was, looking every bit as determined as he felt. Did you stop it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. There was a faint trace of hope in her eyes, and Musk realized just how much they were both relying on each other. It was no longer just about survival. It was about fixing everything, stopping this madness once and for all. Musk nodded, letting out a slow, shaky breath. "For now. The countdown's frozen, but I'm not sure how long that'll last." She looked past him, noticing the motionless beast. Her eyes widened. It's not moving. What did you do?" "It's temporarily disabled. I stopped the self-destruct sequence, but there's something bigger going on here. The mastermind, the one behind all of this, he's still in control. We need to find him." Her expression darkened, and she took a step toward the console, her gaze flicking over the complex array of screens and data streams. "If he's still in control of the systems, we need to get to the heart of this place. We can't keep running. We have to shut it all down, permanently." Musk nodded, more determined than ever. This wasn't just about escaping anymore. This wasn't about saving themselves. They were fighting for the future, for everyone else who might fall prey to the mastermind's twisted plans. He glanced back at the beast, still frozen in place. For now, it seemed harmless, but Musk knew that could change in an instant. Time was still ticking, but it wasn't just the countdown that mattered. It was the fight for control over the facility. "Let's go," Musk said, his voice firm. The woman hesitated. "What about the beast?" "I'll deal with it. You focus on getting us to the control center. The core is there. If we can access it, we can disable everything. This ends today." With that, they moved in sync. Musk took the lead, cautiously stepping toward the door, his senses on high alert. They had no idea what lay ahead, what other surprises the mastermind had in store, but Musk had made a promise to himself, and to her, that he wasn't going to let this continue, no matter what it took. As they moved deeper into the facility, they passed through hallways filled with glowing screens and tech that seemed like it belonged in a sci-fi thriller. Everything felt surreal, too polished, too advanced for the kind of place they had imagined this to be. The building itself was a labyrinth, and with every turn, they could feel the weight of the stakes bearing down on them. "This place is massive," the woman remarked, her voice barely more than a whisper as they passed through another long corridor. "I know," Musk replied, "but it's not the size that worries me. It's what's inside." He glanced over at her, his expression serious. "We've got one shot at this, one chance to stop it all." She nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Musk could tell she wasn't just in this for survival anymore. She was in it to win it. They both were. As they approached the central control room, the air felt thicker, heavier. The hum of the system seemed louder now, more oppressive. Musk knew they were getting closer to the heart of the beast, the very core of the operation that had set everything in motion. If they could make it through, they'd be able to take the whole system down. But if they didn't... The woman's hand shot out, grabbing Musk's arm. "Elon, look." Musk turned, his eyes narrowing. Down the hallway, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The beast wasn't alone. More of them, dozens, if not hundreds, were moving in unison toward them, their glowing red eyes piercing the darkness like sentinels of destruction. The security droids, the real army of this place, had been unleashed. Musk cursed under his breath. "We're out of time." But then, from the corner of his eye, he saw something that made his heart race. A door, an emergency access door, leading to a maintenance lift. "Get to that lift," Musk shouted. "Now." Without a second thought, they sprinted toward the door, the sound of mechanical footsteps growing louder behind them. Musk's mind was already working, calculating the odds, strategizing. He couldn't fight them all, not here, not now, but he could buy them time. As they reached the door, Musk slammed his hand against the access panel. The door slid open with a hiss, and they rushed inside, just as the first droid rounded the corner. Musk hit the button for the lift to descend, but the countdown was still ticking in the back of his mind. They couldn't keep running. Not anymore. The maintenance lift groaned as it descended, its old cables creaking under the weight of the tension in the air. Musk's fingers twitched at his sides, itching for something, anything, to keep his mind busy, but there was nothing. The woman stood beside him, eyes scanning the dark depths below, her face set in grim determination. Both of them knew that getting in the lift had bought them only a few seconds of respite, nothing more. "I don't like this," the woman muttered, her voice barely audible over the mechanical hum of the lift. "It's too quiet." Musk couldn't argue with that. The silence was suffocating, a far cry from the blaring alarms and frantic chaos that had consumed the building only minutes ago. The beast and its army were close, but for now, the lift provided the illusion of safety. But Musk knew better than to relax. The lift was moving too slowly, too methodical. It wasn't just the machines that were after them now. There was someone else. Someone who had orchestrated all of this, carefully pulling strings and setting traps. The mastermind. "You think they know we're on our way to the core?" the woman asked, breaking the silence. "They know," Musk said with certainty. "They're probably watching us right now. They know everything about this facility, about us." The woman's eyes flickered to the small camera mounted on the ceiling of the lift. It was no longer just a matter of escaping the beast. They were dealing with an intelligence far more dangerous than any machine. "I don't care how much they know," Musk said, his voice sharp. "We're ending this now." Just as the words left his mouth, the lift suddenly jolted to a stop, sending a shock through Musk's body. He grabbed onto the railing for balance as the woman stumbled. The faint red emergency lights above them blinked to life, casting the room in an eerie glow. "What the hell?" Musk muttered, stepping toward the door to check the control panel. The lift wasn't supposed to stop. It was designed to move swiftly between levels, but now they were stuck in some unmarked floor. The woman's expression tightened. "It's a trap?" Before Musk could respond, the intercom crackled to life, sending a cold, mechanical voice through the lift. "Did you really think you could just waltz in here and stop me?" The voice was familiar, smooth, with a menacing edge. "The mastermind. You're too late. This is where it ends." Musk's jaw clenched. This wasn't just a warning. It was a message, delivered right to them, designed to shake them, to make them doubt their mission. "You're not going to win," Musk shot back, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "We're shutting this down. You can't control everything." There was a pause, a brief silence that stretched on too long, before the voice returned, colder than before. "I don't need to control everything, Elon. I just need to control you." And with that, the lights in the lift flickered, and the temperature dropped, an unnatural chill sweeping over the small space. Musk could feel the air turning icy, the kind of cold that pressed against his skin like a weight. The woman shuddered. "What's happening?" What is this? Musk's eyes scanned the small compartment as the reality of their situation set in. The lift, which had previously been their temporary escape, was now a cage. The mastermind wasn't just trying to kill them. He was trying to break them. "You're in my world now," the voice continued, its tone almost amused. "This is my game, Elon. You think you can outsmart me, outmaneuver me? No one can escape once I'm in control." Musk's mind raced as the lift seemed to descend even slower now. The temperature was plummeting rapidly, and the woman's breath became visible, a ghostly mist hanging in the air. Every inch of the space felt like it was closing in on them, suffocating them with the weight of their own fear. He turned to the woman. "Stay calm. We're getting out of here." She nodded, but her eyes were wide with uncertainty. The situation was spiraling, and they both knew it. If they didn't get moving soon, the lift would become a tomb. Musk quickly assessed their options. There had to be a way to override the system. The control panel was right in front of him. His fingers flew over the interface, searching for a way to reset the system. There were no external locks, no traps he could see, just a few broken wires that he could attempt to reconnect. He could feel the weight of the mastermind's words ringing in his ears. Control, control. It all came down to that. Whoever held the control held the power. But before he could act, a new sound echoed through the lift, a low hum, followed by a series of sharp clicks. Musk's heart sank as the lift's walls seemed to shift, a section of them pulling apart to reveal a compartment hidden within the walls themselves. Inside the compartment were rows of glowing, mechanical eyes, beast-like sentries, only smaller and more agile, their bodies streamlined for combat. "Shit," Musk muttered under his breath. The doors to the compartment hissed open fully, and the small mechanical soldiers surged forward, their red eyes locking onto Musk and the woman in unison. "We've got to move now," Musk shouted, grabbing her wrist and pulling her toward the back of the lift. The beast might have been immobilized, but these smaller, faster machines were just as dangerous, if not more so. The woman reacted without hesitation, moving with agility Musk hadn't expected. Together, they darted to the far corner of the lift, their backs pressed against the cold, metal walls. The creatures were advancing quickly, their movements almost too fluid to track. Musk's mind raced. He needed something, anything, to stop them. And then, an idea sparked. Musk reached for the emergency button above the control panel, slamming it with his fist. The lift shook as a loud grinding sound filled the air. The entire shaft seemed to vibrate with power. Musk watched in disbelief as the lift's doors began to slowly close, trapping the mechanical soldiers inside. They screeched, their limbs flailing, but they were too slow to stop the closing doors. "I knew I could count on you, Musk," the mastermind's voice crackled from the intercom, this time sounding more irritated than amused. "But don't think for a second you've won. You haven't even scratched the surface of what I've built here. You're just a small piece in a much bigger plan." Musk didn't respond. There was no time for conversation, and he didn't need to hear any more of the mastermind's taunts. He slammed his hand against the override button one more time, forcing the lift to continue its descent. The fight wasn't over yet. The temperature was still plummeting, and the cold gnawed at Musk's bones as they made their way deeper into the heart of the facility. "This isn't just a trap," the woman said, breath coming out in visible puffs. "It's a warning." Musk's eyes narrowed as the lift continued its descent. They had reached the final level. The core was close, and the mastermind, whatever his grand plan was waiting for them. And so was the real fight. The lift descended slowly, but with every passing second, the weight of what was coming pressed harder on Musk's chest. The temperature in the lift was unbearable now, an unrelenting chill that made his fingers stiff and his breath shallow. His mind was racing. The deeper they went, the more intense the danger. The mastermind's voice echoed through the intercom again, every word dripping with confidence. "You've come this far, Elon. I'll give you that. But this is where it ends." Musk clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. The mastermind wasn't bluffing. The deeper they went into this twisted facility, the closer they got to the true source of power, the core that controlled everything. But Musk had never been one to back down from a challenge. This wasn't just about stopping a countdown. It wasn't even just about saving themselves anymore. This was about something much bigger, the future itself. Just a little farther, Musk muttered under his breath, eyes fixed on the descending numbers on the lift's display. They were nearly there, nearly to the heart of this nightmare. The woman beside him glanced at him, her eyes filled with determination and fear in equal measure. She was tense, every muscle in her body primed for action, but even she couldn't mask the uncertainty in her gaze. "Do you really think we can stop him?" she asked, her voice low but steady. "This guy, he's planned for everything. He's always one step ahead." Musk met her eyes, his own filled with unwavering resolve. "We've got one advantage over him. We're unpredictable. He thinks he's in control, but we've been adapting. He hasn't seen us fight back like this." Just as he finished speaking, the lift gave a final, ominous jolt and came to a complete stop. The doors hissed open, revealing an empty hallway bathed in the same sterile, flickering light as the rest of the facility. The air was thick with tension, the silence broken only by the sound of their breath and the low hum of the machines deep in the walls. They stepped out cautiously, scanning their surroundings. "This is it," Musk said, glancing at the woman. "The core should be just ahead. We disable that. We disable everything." She nodded, though the wariness in her posture told Musk everything he needed to know. They were walking straight into the lion's den. As they moved through the sterile, gray hallway, the doors they passed seemed to pulse with an unsettling energy. Musk's mind was alert, every sense on high, knowing that at any moment, the mastermind could throw something else at them. The entire place was a trap designed to break them down, to make them question their every step. The fact that they had made it this far was an achievement in itself, but the real challenge awaited them just ahead. They came to a massive steel door, thick, reinforced, and with a glowing panel on the side. This was it, the core. Musk stepped forward, eyes fixed on the panel, his fingers already moving toward the keypad. Suddenly, the intercom crackled again, and the mastermind's voice flooded the room. "Did you really think I wouldn't see you coming? You've made it this far, but it's too late. You've already lost." Musk ignored the taunting voice, focusing entirely on the keypad. His fingers flew over the keys, typing in the override code he had memorized. He had prepared for this, had studied the facility's blueprints for days leading up to this moment. His mind was sharp, and every calculation ran like clockwork. But just as the final digit was pressed, the door didn't open. "What the hell?" Musk muttered, his brow furrowed. "It should have worked." "Something's wrong," the woman said, her voice tight with concern. "It's a trap?" Musk slammed his fist against the panel, frustration rising in his chest. The mastermind was one step ahead again. The intercom crackled to life once more, this time with a cold laugh that sent a chill down Musk's spine. "You really think you can outsmart me? The moment you stepped foot in this facility, you sealed your fate. I knew you'd try to stop me, but what you don't understand is, I've already won." A red light began to flash above the door, and the countdown clock, the one that had stopped earlier, flashed back to life. "Wait," Musk whispered. His eyes widened as he read the numbers that were ticking away. The countdown wasn't just for one system anymore. It was for everything. The entire facility was primed to go into lockdown. "What is this?" The woman's voice shook with fear as she realized the truth. "Is this a self-destruct?" Musk felt his heart drop into his stomach. The mastermind had expected them to get this far. He'd planned for it. But this wasn't just a system shutdown. It was the endgame. The intercom crackled again. "I have one final request, Musk," the mastermind's voice purred. "Tell me, what's it like to be so close to victory, only to know you're going to lose?" The woman's breath caught in her throat, but Musk didn't allow himself to fall into despair. He couldn't. Not now. Not when they were so close. "We're not done yet," he said firmly, more to himself than to her. "We can still stop this. I just need to get into the core's mainframe. There has to be a way." He turned back to the door, but before he could do anything more, a sudden, deafening sound tore through the air. The hiss of an opening door, followed by the unmistakable sound of mechanical footsteps. Out of the shadows, the beast appeared, its massive form filling the doorway. Its glowing red eyes locked onto Musk, and for a brief moment, all he could feel was the weight of the situation. They had come so far, but now, the final confrontation was upon them. The beast's massive claws scraped against the floor as it advanced, its body moving with terrifying speed. Musk's heart pounded in his chest, but there was no time to waste. The countdown was ticking. The core was still locked. The beast was closing in. "Go!" Musk shouted to the woman. "Get to the control panel. I'll deal with this." She hesitated, but Musk's voice left no room for argument. "I'm not letting you die in here. Get to that panel." The woman ran, sprinting toward the control panel just beside the core's massive vault. Musk faced the beast head-on, his eyes narrowing. It was now or never. "You want me. You've got me," Musk muttered under his breath, bracing himself. The beast let out a low, guttural growl, its mechanical limbs moving faster than Musk had anticipated. But he was ready. He dodged to the side, his hand reaching for the emergency tools attached to his belt. He had to slow it down long enough for the woman to do her part. If he didn't, a single shot rang out. The beast paused for just a moment, its body jerking back from the impact. Musk's eyes widened as the woman, now at the control panel, had successfully accessed the core system. "Come on," Musk muttered, pushing forward. "Just a little longer." The beast growled, its massive form shifting like an unstoppable force, its glowing red eyes narrowing as it locked onto Musk. Each step it took seemed to reverberate through the ground, as though the very building itself trembled in fear of the machine. Musk's pulse quickened, and he felt the cold sweat on his brow as the countdown continued to tick down in the background. Every second mattered. There was no more time to think, only to act. Musk shifted his weight, bracing himself for the inevitable. His mind was calculating, already mapping out 1,000 possible ways to confront the beast. But there was no simple answer. The monster's sheer size and power made it a nearly impossible opponent. It was designed for this moment, designed to be unbeatable. But Musk wasn't about to give up. Not now. Not when they were so close to shutting everything down. The woman's voice broke through the chaos. "Musk, I've almost got it. Just hold it off for a few more seconds." Musk's heart raced. He needed to give her the time she needed. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. He had dealt with worse odds before, faced down impossible situations, and found a way to survive. This time would be no different. The beast advanced, its metal claws scraping the floor like a predator closing in on its prey. Musk dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding a strike that would have surely torn him apart. The beast's speed was unnerving. It was fast, faster than any machine Musk had ever encountered. But Musk was faster in his mind. He noticed the flickering red lights in the beast's eyes, a subtle glitch in its movement, an indication of a weak point. That was his chance. He drew a deep breath and lunged toward the beast, dodging another swipe of its claws, then firing his taser directly at its exposed circuit boards along its side. The beast let out a shriek, an unnatural noise that rattled through the very walls. It staggered backward, momentarily stunned. "Yes," Musk shouted, but the victory was short-lived. The beast recovered almost instantly, its optics flashing with renewed intensity. It locked its gaze on Musk, a mechanical growl emanating from its throat as it charged again. Musk barely had time to react. He dashed to the side, grabbing a metal pipe from the ground and swinging it at the machine's legs. It connected, but the blow barely slowed it down. Behind him, the woman's voice was frantic. "I'm almost there. Just a few more seconds." Musk's eyes darted back and forth, his brain working at full capacity. He needed to end this fight, and fast. Suddenly, an idea struck him, a risky idea, but the only one he had left. He needed to lead the beast into the center of the room, where the security systems were weakest. If he could just get the machine to focus entirely on him for a moment, he could trap it. The beast lunged again, its jaws snapping shut, but Musk wasn't there. At the last second, he sidestepped, grabbing a steel rod from the nearby equipment crate and hurling it across the room to distract the creature. The beast's attention snapped to the noise, and Musk used that opening to sprint across the room, aiming for the glowing blue consoles along the far wall. The core system. This was the moment he had been waiting for. With a final burst of speed, Musk dove toward the main console, slamming his hands onto the keyboard. He could hear the beast's footsteps thunder behind him, but he didn't look back. Instead, he focused entirely on the screen in front of him. Come on, he muttered under his breath, fingers flying across the keys. The interface was complicated, but Musk had anticipated this. He was ready. The countdown continued ticking down ominously, a steady reminder of how little time was left. The beast was almost on him when Musk finally managed to input the correct sequence. A loud, resonant beep sounded, and the massive steel doors in front of him slammed shut, cutting off the beast's path. Musk barely had time to breathe before the intercom crackled to life again. You really think a door will stop me, Musk? The mastermind's voice came through, almost smug. You're still too late. The system is already in motion. Even if you shut down the core, you won't be able to stop it. You never had a chance. Musk didn't flinch at the words. He didn't need to hear it anymore. His fingers pressed down on the emergency override button with every ounce of force he had left. The countdown accelerated. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Musk's stomach twisted into knots. They were running out of time. What's happening? The woman yelled, fear evident in her voice. She had reached the console next to Musk and was watching the countdown clock with wide eyes. Musk glanced at the core, watching as lights flickered across the system. The countdown clock blinked erratically as the system fought against them. The mastermind had coded it to be nearly impossible to stop, but Musk wasn't just anyone. He knew how to hack, how to force his way into systems. This was his field of expertise. 5 seconds. 4. Please, no, the woman breathed, her voice trembling with panic. She had been through so much already, and now it all came down to this final, heart-pounding moment. 3 seconds. 2. Musk's hands were a blur as he typed the final override code. He wasn't sure if it would work, but he had to try. He couldn't give up now. 1 second. The lights above them flickered wildly, the final second of the countdown stretching out as though time itself was suspended in midair. The intercom crackled again, but this time, the mastermind's voice was different. It was no longer confident, no longer smug. It was filled with frustration. Impossible. This can't be happening. And then, the lights above them went dark. The countdown clock stopped. The building around them shuddered. Silence. For a moment, Musk thought his heart had stopped, that time had frozen in the vacuum of his mind. He had no idea if they had succeeded or failed, but when the emergency lights flickered back to life, he saw it. The core was powering down. The massive steel doors that had once locked the beast inside were now sealed, no longer a threat. We did it, the woman whispered, her voice a mix of disbelief and relief. Musk could hardly believe it. The core was shutting down. The mastermind's grand plan had failed. For the first time in what felt like hours, Musk allowed himself to exhale. They had done it. But just as they began to relax, the intercom came to life again. The mastermind's voice, raspy, filled with rage, echoed through the speakers. You think this is over, Musk? This is just the beginning. You can't stop what's already been set in motion. The building was eerily silent now. The hum of machines had ceased, and for a moment, it felt like they had won. The countdown clock had frozen, the beast was contained, and the core had powered down. Musk stood there, staring at the screens before him, unsure if he could trust the peace. The mastermind's voice echoed in his mind, taunting him even after the shutdown. You think this is over, Musk? This is just the beginning. You can't stop what's already been set in motion. His words sent a shiver down Musk's spine. What did the mastermind mean by that? They had disabled the core. The countdown had stopped. It had to be over, right? Musk, are you okay? The woman's voice broke through his thoughts, her face a mixture of exhaustion and uncertainty. What's happening? Musk turned to her, his brow furrowed. I'm not sure. The mastermind? He's still got something else planned. I don't think we've seen the last of this. Just as he spoke, the lights flickered again, and the ground beneath them trembled. It wasn't a small tremor. It was a deep, unsettling vibration that rippled through the entire structure. What is that? The woman asked, her voice tense with anxiety. I don't know, Musk replied, his eyes scanning the room for any signs of danger. The intercom crackled to life again, and the mastermind's voice filled the space, this time distorted and mechanical, as though coming from a distant speaker. It's too late. You've deactivated the core, yes, but the real power lies in what I've already set in motion. You've been playing checkers, while I've been playing chess. Welcome to the final game. The voice faded, replaced by the sound of machinery whirring to life in the distance. Musk's heart sank. Whatever the mastermind had done, they were still in danger. Suddenly, a massive blast shook the building, sending Musk and the woman stumbling to the floor. The walls groaned under the force of the explosion, and the entire structure seemed to be coming apart at the seams. The emergency alarms blared, flashing red lights illuminating the chaos. What's happening? The woman screamed, her voice almost lost in the blaring sirens. Musk scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. He had to think quickly. The mastermind had triggered something big. It was clear now, this wasn't just a system shutdown. This was a final attempt to bring everything crashing down. They had to stop it, or they would never make it out alive. The woman grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a nearby corridor. We need to get out of here. Whatever he's doing, it's going to take the whole place down. Musk shook his head. No, we need to stop it. We can't let him win. They sprinted down the corridor, the walls shaking with each passing second. The sound of clanking metal filled the air as the building seemed to come to life, like some kind of living, breathing machine. Every step they took echoed through the halls, and Musk could feel the tension in the air. They were running out of time. They rounded a corner and found themselves in front of a large control room, the heart of the facility. The room was dark, but the screens flickered to life as they approached. A message appeared on the main display. Override initiated. Self-destruct sequence engaged. Musk's stomach dropped. The mastermind hadn't just set the countdown for the core. He'd programmed the entire building to destroy itself. They had no time left. No, Musk whispered, his heart hammering in his chest. We've got to stop it. We've got to stop the self-destruct. He rushed toward the console, but the woman grabbed his arm again, her eyes wide with panic. There's no time, Musk. It's already started. We have to get out. Musk gritted his teeth. We're not running. Not yet. We can still stop it. The countdown clock on the screen continued to tick down, each second taking them closer to the end. The woman hesitated, then nodded. Okay, let's do this. Together, they worked frantically at the console, Musk typing furiously while the woman scanned the room for any other overrides. The air around them was thick with tension, the sound of the countdown beating like a drum in their ears. Come on, Musk muttered, sweat pouring down his face. Come on. The lights in the room flickered, and for a moment, everything went dark. The room was plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the emergency glow of the console. Musk's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't falter. He continued to type, his hands moving with speed and precision. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the facility. The doors to the control room burst open, and in walked the beast, its eyes still glowing red, its mechanical body moving with deadly precision. Musk didn't have time to react. He was too close. The countdown was too close. Musk, get down, the woman shouted. But Musk was already moving. His fingers were flying over the console, desperate to stop the destruction before it was too late. The beast advanced, its massive claws reaching out for Musk. With one final, furious swipe, it lunged. But just as it did, the countdown clock flashed, the numbers racing toward 0. And then, a deafening silence. Musk stared at the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. He had done it. The self-destruct sequence had been overridden. The countdown had stopped. The beast froze mid-strike, its mechanical body locked in place. For a moment, it seemed as if the entire world had frozen. Then, the lights flickered back to full power, and the building seemed to exhale, the weight of the danger lifting. The beast powered down, its red eyes dimming, and the massive steel doors that had been holding it back creaked open. Musk collapsed against the console, his body shaking with exhaustion. The woman stood beside him, equally spent, but alive. "We did it," she said, her voice quiet but filled with awe. "We really did it." Musk let out a long breath. "Yeah, we did." But as he looked at the now blank control screen, a strange feeling of unease settled in his chest. The mastermind's voice had been quiet for too long. "I don't know," Musk said, his voice low. "I think this might not be over yet." The intercom crackled one last time, but this time, the mastermind's voice was distant, almost defeated. "You've won this round, Musk. But remember, I'm always watching, and there are always more games to be played." The silence that followed was deafening. They had won, but the war was far from over. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?